Out of the gates and ready to go. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow underway. The Friday edition. We've made it. Big show plan, like always. Andrew Brandt, sports business insider. He's done everything from be the sports agent to be the one inside an NFL organization negotiating contracts on behalf of the team. He'll join us coming up in 20 minutes. Always a great convo there and plenty of topics to hit. Doug Greenberg from Front Office Sports is on today's program. He's also coming up later this hour to discuss the latest update on the gambling scandal and the investigation across the state of Iowa, where more players have been named and involved in this and face criminal charges. We'll get to that coming up in the headlines. Plus, Bernard Pollard, former NFL safety, always opinionated. He joins us in hour 3. Chad, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Hutton. Good to be here on a Friday. I get back to softball coaching tonight.
Nice.
It's like it never even left. It's like the season never even ended. Had about a month off and starting with a new team tonight. First practice, then a practice tomorrow at noon.
There is no off season.
I'm sure it's going to be very nice and cool at noon tomorrow for that noon practice. Looking forward to that. And we've got 4 practices in 6 days coming up to get ready for the grind of a fall ball season. So prepping for that mentally while I prep for a great show with you.
The pregame
They're all
speech.
big. They're all great. We're going to do it all today.
The big bets by Phil Mickelson, I don't know if they all turned out great, but that's where we start with the headlines because he says he didn't make the big bet. He never placed the big bet on the Ryder Cup, which was a part of the excerpt from the new book from Billy Walters, the renowned gambling expert, who says that Mickelson lost upwards of $100 million that he knows about. And he said he wagered up to $1 billion throughout his 4 or 5 year analysis that he was giving in this book from like 2011 to 2015. And specifically, there was a allegation that he called up Walters to make a $400,000 bet on the Ryder Cup in 2012. And, of course, Mickelson was a part of that team. It was betting on the United States in the Ryder Cup. Mickelson he's playing, I believe, this week on Live Golf on the tour, and he's released this statement through Twitter. I never bet on the Ryder Cup. While it's well known that I always enjoy a friendly wager on the course, I would never undermine the integrity of the game. I've also been very open about my gambling addiction. I have previously conveyed my remorse, took responsibility, have gotten help, and have been fully committed to therapy that has positively impacted me, and I feel good about where I am now. That from Mickelson after the news came out from Billy Walters in his new book that he's releasing soon with all the backstories.
This is how you respond to something right here. Like this tweet, this could be taught in PR classes across America. Just own what's already been owned, and if you have something to refute in an excerpt from a book or a report by someone, go ahead and do it with zero emotion involved and nothing else. I thought this was a great response from Phil Mickelson. There's not much more you can add to it when Phil himself says, yeah, I've gone to discuss at length my huge gambling problem, and I'm remorseful about it, and I'm in therapy, and I think I'm in a better place now than I was. So he's not denying that he lost $100 million. He's not denying that he bet over $1 billion. But there is one part of what's being said about him that he says is not true.
Well, part
and
of the story, he's not denying part of the story from Billy Walters, which was Billy Walters said, yeah, I'm not going to take that bet because do you realize what you're doing? Do you want to be Pete Rose? Because right now you're the Arnold Palmer of the tour currently. So Walters is claiming he never took the bet and that he presumed that Mickelson then turned around, picked up the phone, and made a call to someone else. So while Mickelson is saying, I never bet on the Ryder Cup, he's not denying that he picked up the phone to make a bet on the Ryder Cup. That's what he's also not saying in this statement. I mean, you could weigh one side or the other. The numbers are outrageous to me. $1 billion is what it is estimated that he would wager. He lost upwards of $100 million. Can you imagine, Chad?
No, I mean,
and think about what he's raking in.
When I saw the $1 billion, I thought, well, he's not made $1 billion. He doesn't have $1 billion. And then you realize, oh, well, he's betting on things that he's won or also money he did not have that equaled $1 billion. He also clearly won a lot in
Yeah.
gambling to have the $1 billion to wager at any point. He lost $100 million, is what Walters is reporting. And yeah, he's not saying that everything he said is untrue, that I didn't try to place a bet or talk to him about a bet. He's saying I would never undermine the integrity of the game. Now, he left out the part where I had to be reminded of that by my buddy who's a world-class gambler to say, you don't want to do this, right? And then he thought, yeah, you're right. I would never undermine the game. And maybe he picked up the phone and called another guy. They said the same thing. And then Phil said, oh, even with this problem that I have, that's two people now that make their living gambling that are telling me not to do this. Maybe I won't. And then he had the realization, yeah, as bad of a gambler as I am and I can't stop, I won't do it on something I'm participating in. So maybe that's the case.
Iowa and Iowa State have been the focus, the subjects of the state of Iowa's ongoing gambling probe that continues, where more players have been named, and on top of what we learned last month, or earlier this month, I should say, with Iowa State quarterback Hunter Deckers, who was charged with tampering after allegedly making 26 bets on Iowa State athletics, including a game for Iowa State football that he didn't play in, but he was on the team at the time. 4 more Iowa State players have been charged, along with 3 more Iowa Hawkeyes. 2 of those 3 have since transferred to other programs, including Oklahoma State. And the 4 Iowa State players that have been named have not been practicing currently for the football team there. But they include games, they bet on games in which they have played for their university. So here we go again as more and more players get charged in the ongoing investigation across the state.
Look, it's bad news for Iowa and Iowa State, so I don't want to make light of it because you don't want anything to hit at the integrity of any sport, especially sports that we love, like college football. And these guys made a huge mistake. This was not just, I placed a couple bets on college football that did not involve my program. No, these are hundreds, in some case, thousands of bets equaling tens of thousands of dollars that was wagered by some of these players based on the records they have. But I also can't help but point out the absolute comedy in the fact that even Iowa offensive players bet the under when the Iowa Hawkeyes were playing, much like the rest of us gamblers, whether you're betting $1 or like Phil Mickelson, $100 million, bet the under in Iowa Hawkeyes football games last year. They even knew when they got the game plan and saw 5 fullback trap plays. They said, yep, we're going under again today. Coach Ferentz wants to have a 4 tight end set. Yep, we're definitely going the under this week. That, my friends, is absolutely hilarious, and I love that part of it. Crazy enough, the Iowa State running back who was their starter, one of the bets he placed was money line win for Texas against his team. They have no signs that he threw the game in any way. They won 30-7. They were a 6.5-point favorite, and he placed a bet on the other team to win in Texas. Hutton, this is like the ultimate example of hedging your happiness. If you're playing in the game and you're a favorite in the game and you end up whipping the team, that you bet money the other way, so at least if you lose the game and you're Iowa State, you say, well, guys, that sucked, but I've got $1,000 more now because I bet on Texas.
It's a bad spot for college football and college athletics, Chad, because they've updated their gambling policy where now they can permanently ban a player for his eligibility based on this. But if you
based on betting on an event with their own team
or their university,
they're all going to be banned, for good.
Or a sport ongoing within the university, and it's tiered based on how much you gamble, how much you place. The 800 plus fits this criteria, but I can't help but think this is the state of Iowa investigation. Imagine if state by state you went through and did this. The issues that would be on top of the table for college football, college athletics in general. So I'm not naive to think that this is just a Iowa State-Iowa issue. Where's Northern Iowa and Drake, by the way? FCS programs. Are they not looking at them? I haven't heard anything about the other football programs in the state compared to Iowa State. Again, this reminds me a bit of, we're getting the reports of the NFL players who are betting, but we don't hear a thing about NBA or Major League Baseball.
Did this not also start in some way with that same sports book in Cincinnati Remember, there's some
tied back
college
in.
baseball stuff that tied back to Iowa State baseball, where they were immediately put on notice because of activity at this sports book. That this was like the whistleblower, the unintentional whistleblower was the guy placing the bet for Alabama's head baseball coach at that sports book. Then they found other things. Cincinnati baseball became a part of it also. It became a big college baseball scandal. Then once they opened the door to that, you start seeing the football programs involved as well.
But imagine if you did the statewide probe in Ohio and Alabama based on that. You know what I mean?
Is Alabama football strong enough to shut that down?
Well,
if they were to start looking into it? I say that half joking, but sure, there's got to be others across the country. It's not just the state of Iowa that placed bets on their sport. I don't know how many place bets on their own team to lose. I don't know if there's a lot of cases of people trying to throw games for gambling out there. But, yeah, and I do think that a couple of the violations, I'll have to go back and double-check, they bet on their sport and they bet on their university and other sports, but they're only subject to a half a season suspension. When you bet on your own team, I know it's automatic, you're banned from the NCAA, but I do think that there are some that bet on like Iowa State basketball that's only in line for half a season suspension possibly.
Yeah, and the other part of this too is in many cases they're using their parents' account, like they're not using their own account. In some cases they are under 21 while doing so, and with the parents' permission, knowing that the guys were making those and placing those bets. That's where the tampering with records comes in to some of these charges. And some of the charges, carry a hefty, steep penalty. I don't know if it ever reaches that, but that's why Hunter Deckers, through his attorney, said, he's not going to go to camp. He's not playing this year because we are going to focus on the defense, which he is categorically denying. He's going to fight whatever charges are out there instead of prepare for opposing defense week to week.
3 years in prison for some of these charges. I doubt we see that with any of these people being accused of it, but that's pretty steep, and it's not a good look for college football if this thing continues to have tentacles that go outside the state of Iowa.
Couple of NFL preseason notes. Last night, the debut of C.J. Stroud in a Houston Texans uniform did not go well. Maybe it's not all on him because for whatever reason, the Texans decided, well, we're going to play our starting quarterback. We're not going to play our starting tackles, Laramie Tunsil and Titus Howard. We're also not going to play one of our starting guards in Shaq Mason. And the result is what you may expect. C.J. Stroud was sacked a total of 13 times at Ohio State. And here he is running for his life last night against the Patriots defense. He was sacked once, could have been sacked many more times. He only played 2 series, threw a pick. Wasn't pretty. And the result is, well, you look at a stat sheet compared to the decision that was placed to go forward with, backup offensive linemen. These are the results that you get in his debut.
It's a rookie coaching mistake, right?
Yeah.
I think I chalk it up to
unless they've got legitimate battles for starting positions.
Yeah, D'Amico Ryans just probably now would have that happen and say, I know what I was thinking about trying to get the new quarterback some work. But if I'm going to sit my offensive line, I need to sit the biggest investment in the franchise, which is our top pick at quarterback also. So you live and you learn. I'm not going to crush the guy. It's his first preseason game. But I would chalk this up to rookie NFL head coaching mistake by D'Amico Ryans.
And just on the Patriots end of it, Malik Cunningham, interesting story. So he's the former quarterback at Louisville, turned wide receiver now at the Patriots, and they put him back in last night as a quarterback in the fourth quarter. So maybe we see the dual threat aspect of Malik Cunningham active on game days.
Got another slash, Cordell Stewart, coming at us with Malik Cunningham.
Maybe. Debuts with Seattle and Minnesota, Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Jordan Addison made their debuts. Looked okay. Addison made a nice catch. Smith and Jigba had 4 or 5 catches. That was really it. We didn't see much of the starters in either game last night in that one.
We're into the point of the preseason now where the biggest intrigue is trying to build your case for the rookie you're going to take way too early in your fantasy football draft. So when someone's got a big night, you're going to go back and say, hey, I saw what this guy did in preseason game number 1 or number 2. I'm going way too early for this rookie wide receiver. That's the time of year we've entered into in the NFL schedule.
Baker Mayfield's going to start for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the starters are going to be playing for Pittsburgh against him. it's a big preseason chance here because it has been back and forth with Kyle Trask and Baker Mayfield. Although Ira Kaufman, who's a longtime reporter for Tampa Bay, says that he has people within the building that are telling him that it is Baker Mayfield that's going to start week 1 on the road in Minnesota opposite Kirk Cousins on the other sideline. It's Baker's job to lose. So far, though, based on reports and those that have watched practices, it's also been a job he hasn't won outright yet. So the preseason starts will matter, and the starters post-Tom Brady are going to be in the game with Baker as they try to get him up and ready for this offense that hasn't really caught on yet to this point. I'm eager to see what happens here. Because he should be light years ahead of whatever Kyle Trask is doing, regardless of how long Kyle Trask has been there.
I'm hoping for Tampa's sake that this is more much ado about nothing, sort of a fake quarterback battle that is being hyped up. It's not really much of a battle, because if it is a battle, that's not a good sign for Baker Mayfield or this offense. And maybe he gets out there and shows us all they're okay. They're going to be okay with Baker at quarterback. But Armando Salguero said it yesterday that his big response to it was, what's going on with Baker Mayfield? Not, man, Kyle Trask looks great. It's how is Baker Mayfield not slammed the door shut on this quarterback competition? Well, we get a little bit more info now. Looks like he has.
And he was best on the fly in that last drive for the Rams, off the cuff, than anything else that we saw with L.A. Coming up, Andrew Brandt. We'll ask him if he sees a college players union on the horizon. That's next.
Jason Aldean's new song. Jason Aldean's new song, Don't Try It in a Small, Try That in a Small Town, is awesome. It's basically saying to you Antifa clowns out there and you rioters, look, you can go ahead and burn down Democratic-run cities. And the cops, at least in Indianapolis, will be told by alleged drunken mayor to stand down. That's fine. But don't try that in a small town. You saw what happened in Crown Point, Indiana. Crown Point, Indiana, there was rumored that a group was coming in to tear it up. Crown Point's just a little south of Gary. And all the fellas got their shotguns out and lined the streets. Do you know how much trouble there was in Crown Point, Indiana? Bam. 0. Zip. Nada. Liberals went nuts. Oh, this is racism. No, not really. Hey, there's white Antifa. There's black Antifa. You're just protecting your streets. You're just protecting the businesses that you use. See, here in Indy, we did not protect the businesses that we use. We let idiots run wild. We let idiots burn. We let idiots break. We let idiots destroy. That's not the way to go about it. You try that in a small town. Here's what happened in Ottawa Lakes, Michigan, where my wife's from. There was a rumor, group was coming up from both Toledo and Cincinnati. And they were going to go into this gun store and loot it. Word got out. Neighborhood app got started. You know what happened? The fellas, I think it was Ottawa Lakes. There's another town right there. It could be a different town. I don't know. They're all there. You know what happened? The fellas surrounded and protected the gun store. You know the rest of the story, right? The Antifa pussies came up, looked around, saw they were being challenged, and like every single group of bullies, turned around and left. Damn right. That's a small town. And if you think Don't Try It in a Small Town, country music, television or whatever is racist, tough. Good for you. We don't. It's number 1 on the charts. And I put out a tweet earlier today of an African-American guy, big, strong guy, that said, hey, don't be coming down here to Alabama. African-American guy. I'll retweet it. Said, don't even think about coming down here and starting that crap. Don't even think about it. Well, guess what? He ain't wrong. It ain't about black or white. It's about protecting the businesses that you use against people that are trying to destroy your town. And Jason Aldean ain't wrong, baby. And you liberals can bitch and whine and moan and write your articles and try to cancel him or cancel me for standing up for it or get mad at OutKick. I don't care. I love seeing what happened in Ottawa Lakes. You want to come in here? Ain't happening. It just ain't happening. Crown Point, Indiana, everybody called them racist because it was white guys with shotguns. You know what they did? They protected their town. I wish we'd have protected our town here in Indy. You go into Indy, it is awful, horrendous, horrific. Nothing going on downtown for the most part.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. Chad, there are plenty of questions, not many answers across college football right now.
It can be said about a lot of subjects.
No doubt.
But certainly in college football.
No doubt. NFL as well and across the sports business landscape. Andrew Brandt has plenty of answers and opinions on what could be on the horizon. You can check him out with the Business of Sports podcast, which is excellent. Also, the Sports Business League, which you can learn more about, and membership available for great insights at andrew-brandt.com. Great to have you back on. Hope you're doing well.
Good to be with you as always. You know, there's no real football going on, but the business of football never ends. It seems like I've been busier. People sort of in my area have been busier this offseason than many others. And like you said, both college and pro. And you know, that's my background. I was an agent many years. I worked for the Packers 10 years, and now I do this. And the busy time is the off season. You know, when the season's going, when the games are being played in all those professions I mentioned, it's kind of kicked back. You know, like then it's turned over to players and coaches and that side of the world. But sports business is really for the off season. It's really when things happen, the contracts, the free agency, the assemblage of teams, and then the bigger issues about media and about conference realignment in college. And of course, all the dystopia that we've seen with running backs and contracts in the NFL.
I want to start with college and across the landscape if we can. Andrew Brandt with us. Do you foresee a college players union on the horizon? And if so, how would they get that started? How do you build that from the ground up behind the scenes?
Well, I think in terms of how it would start, it's like any union starts where you have a group that wants to collectively bargain and wants to represent them as a bargaining unit. Question I have is like, who would they go to? Would it be all football players? Would it be a segment of the football population? Would it be Power 5 football? Would it only be starters? Would it be quarterbacks and receivers treated differently? That's a big question. And then who are they bargaining with? Are they bargaining with the schools? Are they bargaining with the NCAA? Are they bargaining with the athletic department? Are they bargaining with the university president? So you can say, you sort of hear this, yeah, they should be employees, they should bargain, but then you're like, well, wait a minute, what about, would there be a salary cap? Would there be cuts? Would there be workman's compensation? What tax treatment would everyone get? What about school part of it? If that's allowed, if that's optional? So there's more questions than answers when it comes to that. But on the broader picture, what we've seen is that it is all about the money. It is all about finding the right media partner right now in college football at the highest levels, because media is the lifeblood of all college sports. And if you can get media revenues that win over other options, that's where people are going to go. We've seen that in the past couple of weeks.
And depending on who you ask, it's either doom and gloom and college football as we know it, and college football is going to be dead in 10 years and all of this. Coaches will sort of spout that line about the sport. They don't like where it is. They don't like where it's heading. Players have a different opinion on everything. Media that cover the sport seem to think everything's fine. The product is okay. What do you think? Just the cold business perspective of what you've seen and what could be next. Should we be afraid about the future of college football?
Depends how people feel about purity and amateurism. I mean, that's my simplest answer. I think if you hold on to that ideal in Power Five, big time college football, it's not going to be very pretty for you. This is messy right now. I mean, the perfect storm combination of name, image, likeness money and the transfer portal has created free agency without a salary cap. It's created the option for top college football players to go through a season, come to the end of it, throw their name in the portal, whether they want to leave or not. And really, then it's about what's the number. Okay. So if I can go out in the portal, I can see, well, I can get this number, pick a number, $500,000, $1 million, $700,000 from this school. Then I can go back to my school and say, can you match 700 or do better? It's total free agency with no salary cap. And for those who think that college football should be more amateur, should be more about scholarships and tuition and the old days, yeah, it's not good. But if you're realistic about the economics, then you've got to take a different view of it. I have multiple feelings on this, guys. I do think the name on the front of the jersey is probably more important than the name on the back of the jersey. So how do you deal with that? I mean, if Michigan and Ohio State or Tennessee and Florida or Alabama and LSU are going to play a football game, how many of those 100,000 people in the stands would not come if so-and-so player wasn't playing, right? It's like, it's all about the brand in my case. So what I think is these players are making a ton of money off these brands that they otherwise wouldn't if they went to smaller schools. So it's really sort of a win-win for the players right now.
Andrew Brandt, our guest on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. To the NFL, you mentioned the running back issues that the players have had, the franchise tag. The only position lower would be the kickers and punters on the tag, and there's an $8 million gap between the next positions that they're comparing themselves to. Jonathan Taylor sees what's going to happen here. If he plays, likely he's receiving the tag, if he plays well, from the Indianapolis Colts a year from now. What do you make of the situation there? And, behind the scenes, of course, everything that Irsay has said, and now how they're trying to also say that they want Jonathan Taylor long term.
Yeah, before we leave college, let's talk about that here, because I think running backs are severely disadvantaged by this college eligibility rule with the draft. It's 3 years, as you know. You got to be 3 years removed from high school compared to 1 year in the NBA, no requirement in baseball or hockey. So what does that mean? That means ages 18, 19, 20, they can't get paid other than NIL. So now we're looking at a real disadvantage for this specific position. For quarterbacks, offensive line, defensive line, not so much. But for this position, those are prime earning years. So by the time they get to the NFL at age 21, 22, they're under a rookie contract 4 years till age 26. There's a franchise tag, a 5th-year option for first rounders. Saquon Barkley's not going to see free agency for 7 years, if that. And Jonathan Taylor's in the same boat. What I can't tell you, and you can't tell me, and no one listening can say this, if Jonathan Taylor has the greatest year ever, is that going to help him next year? I don't know. I don't think it will. Think about that. If he has one of the greatest running back years ever, is it going to help him get a contract next year? I don't know. It may hurt. Because with running backs and short shelf life and the shortest career in any position, productivity early in your career does not equal future value. That's the scary thing about the position. How do you solve it? I don't know. I wish I had an answer. Frankly, some of these running backs have called me because they're searching for any answer. If they could get the union not to put aside a special fund for running backs, not to have them treated differently, but if somehow the union could bargain down the draft eligibility rule to what the NBA has 1 year out, that would make a huge difference for running backs. Because then teams would be, okay, I'll give them a second contract at age 23 instead of age 26. Even that would make a huge difference.
Let's stick with running back. Is there a way that Saquon Barkley can view what he did with this adjusted contract as a win for him?
I mean, depends how much he wanted to get back in camp. I've been public about this. I see. I don't know why he did that deal. $900,000 of hard-to-earn incentives, which require the Giants to make the playoffs, and a $2 million advance. Basically, he gets some money 2 months before he was going to otherwise get it, to come to camp 6 weeks before he really needed to get his big check starting in September. I don't get it. I don't get it. And I see why Josh Jacobs is not showing up. He's a franchise tag player. He doesn't need to show up. He'll show up when the games count and he gets his 600,000 a week. But yeah, I don't get it with Barkley. It just shows you, guys, players like Daniil Hunter and Matthew Judon and Budda Baker, you know what the teams did? They just threw him free money for 2023, just to make him happy. Not incentives, right? Not incentives. They gave him real money. Now, Barkley had to sort of beg for his food with incentives. And back to my point about Taylor, if Barkley, now he needs the ball, right? Now he needs to get a lot of carries to get those incentives. So the idea of him saving himself for free agency, that's not there either.
Andrew, you certainly know the Packers' stance and the background with Rodgers there.
Yeah.
In New York, he takes a $35 million pay cut. What's really going on there behind the scenes other than him just volunteering to take a $35 million pay cut?
Yeah, I'd like to know if there's more to the story, because we were reading, or at least reports 2 weeks before that he wanted equity, that he wanted actually a piece of the Jets. And then he takes it's a little complicated because what he had was an option deal inherited by the Jets from the Packers that moved the money actually to 2024. So the way it was structured, he was making like $1 million in 2023 and $107 million in 2024. Now he's making $38 million in 2023. So he actually got a $37 million pay increase, but he took a $70 million pay cut in 2024. So it's a little bit slanted to say he took a $35 million pay cut, because that money wasn't guaranteed. $50 million or so was guaranteed of that old deal. But he's getting great press, and obviously it looks great for him. Really comes down to, is he going to play next year? I know he says all the right things, but he was in the darkness this year, pretty much retired. So you hope he's back next year. If he's not back, then he just got $35 million before, more than he was going to get without this deal. We'll see what happens. We'll see if this deal's redone next year, if he comes back, which sort of brings him back the money. But right now, yes, it's quite a gesture by Aaron, who I know and like, towards the Jets.
So Saudi money has been a big talking point with everything this past summer. So far, the private investment fund has mostly invested in international sports, tennis, golf, Formula One racing, soccer. Andrew, do you see a scenario where they start to inject their money and ownership into big American sports, football, baseball, other American-based big leagues?
Yeah, first of all, I was at the Live Tour this weekend at the Greenberg Resort in West Virginia, and I was impressed. I mean, listen, it was the teams thing is cool, in my opinion, and the music sort of gets you pumped up like you're arriving at a running race. Like I do marathons and running races. It sort of was a nice way, and the shotgun starts. I'm like, a lot of this stuff makes sense. We talk about baseball new rules, trying to get more fans. That makes a lot of sense. So it's clearly injected itself into golf, and I'm hearing that the future may look more Live-like than PGA-like with golf. Could they inject into American sports? Yes. The answer is yes, but don't hold your breath for Saudi majority ownership. In other words, a sport like the NBA allows for sovereign wealth fund investment, but it's up to 30%, with no individual firm having more than 20%. So it's already happened with the Washington Wizards and Capitals. There's 5% money, not from the Saudis, but from Qatari. So Middle Eastern money is already in there, and I would think the Saudis will invest in these sports leagues without majority control. But you know what I say, these billion, the Commanders going for $6 billion, you're going to run out of multi-billionaires, right? So you're going to have to look to institutional money, private equity, obviously, but even Saudi and institutional money from overseas. I think it's coming. And the thing I'll say about the attitude towards Saudi money, I think already, guys, it's changing. maybe incrementally, but bit by bit, the more they invest in golf, in F1, in European soccer, in the Washington Wizards, there's that desensitization that the Saudis are these terrible people. So it's working. What they're doing is working as they try to diversify from oil into a more likable area of sports.
Andrew Brandt has been our guest, the Sports Business Insider. You can check out the Sports Business League, 7-day free trial right now. More information on the site, andrew-brandt.com. Andrew Brandt 2 is how you can check out the Instagram account with great reels and more. I love the Sunday 7 newsletter as well, Andrew. It's always my first read on Sunday morning. So keep up the great work, and hopefully we'll have you on again soon.
Thanks, guys. Always enjoy being with you. Take care.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Same to you.
Andrew.
Great perspective there. And, yeah, how about the equity discussion about Rodgers with the Jets?
It's interesting.
Down the road.
One I haven't really thought about, but could be sort of a gentleman's agreement, handshake, that help us out now, and then we'll talk and we'll help each other out later. That makes a lot of sense.
He certainly talks like he's coming back next year,
As to why someone would take a $35 million pay cut
on the duration of the contract. Yeah, absolutely. Coming up, there are more players that have been named and charged in the sports betting probe across the state of Iowa. Doug Greenberg will join us from Front Office Sports. We'll discuss the criminal punishment, what the NCAA can or won't do, plus other states not diving in. All of that and more straight ahead with Front Office Sports' Doug Greenberg here on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow.
Two biggest social media giants, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, are set to battle it out, and I'm here on Broadway asking people who they put their money on. Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk? They're going to fight each other. Who do you think's going to win?
I think Mark's got him.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you think that?
Because he's a man.
Okay, and Elon Musk isn't?
Oh, well, of course, he got money.
Okay. Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg in a fight?
I don't know. I'm going to go with Musk.
Why?
It just seems like he's a little bit younger, a little bit smarter.
You just got a good feeling about him?
I got a good feeling.
Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg?
Musk.
Why?
He trains. That guy's going to beat his.
But Mark Zuckerberg is actually training jiu-jitsu for 9 months.
Not happening. Elon Musk all day.
Elon Musk.
Why do you think?
He has no soul. I mean, I think he's definitely just going to no holds barred.
Elon Musk.
Why do you think that?
I don't know. I feel like he's stronger and smarter.
Oh, Elon Musk.
All the way? Why?
All the way. He's an animal. Think about it.
Mark Zuckerberg's been training for 9 months jiu-jitsu. You think Elon Musk can take him?
Yeah, I think he could take him.
Elon, that oh God, stop playing with Elon. Elon really do this out here, for real.
I hope Elon
Really? Why do you think so?
got better ideas.
Zuckerberg's like 5'7", 155. Musk is 6'1", 190. But Zuckerberg's been training jiu-jitsu for 9 months. Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, who's going to win in a fight?
Oh, Elon Musk. No doubt.
Why do you think so?
He's the GOAT. I've been seeing all the Twitter handles and all the talk, and I'm on Elon Musk's side. I'm ready for them to get in the WWE ring and then come off the top rope. That's what I want to see. I want to see a people's elbow to Mark Zuckerberg.
If one was more likely to be a lizard or a robot, who would it be?
Elon.
Okay.
I think Mark Zuckerberg will win.
Why do you think that?
Because I think he already trains MMA. So he's got like the prior experience and stuff. I mean, they're both billionaires, so they have the opportunity to get the best training. But I think Mark Zuckerberg will pull away with the win.
Elon Musk.
Why do you think so?
Because he's bigger.
Bigger, okay, but Mark Zuckerberg's been training jiu-jitsu for 9 months. Do you think that matters?
No.
Zuckerberg, he's part alien or robot, so he may have some secret powers that we don't know about.
I was going to say, is that an advantage? Does he have an advantage over Elon Musk then?
Yeah, I mean, if he, sheds his skin and becomes an alien and eats everyone, yeah, I think so.
Elon Musk is mental, so Elon Musk.
All it is just he's mental. He's mentally crazy, so.
He just wouldn't care, would he?
Okay.
He'd just absolutely go for it. I think Zuckerberg would be a bit more refrained.
Okay.
If that should ever happen, which I doubt, but you never know, it'd be entertaining.
Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg?
Elon Musk.
Why?
Because my dad is in love with Elon Musk.
Okay.
I think I'm going to have to go with Zuckerberg. I mean, Threads just came out, so.
Who do you think would win?
Zuck.
Why do you think so?
He's not a real human. He's a robot.
So he'll use that to his advantage.
Yeah, and all the Krav Maga stuff too. Yeah.
Yeah. Who do you think would win in a fight, Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk?
Elon Musk.
Why do you think Elon Musk?
I think Elon's
He
smarter.
works with robots, so maybe he built a robot to fight for him.
But what if Mark Zuckerberg is a robot?
Oh wow. Then I might have to change my answer.
Who do you think's gonna win?
Me.
Sixth and Peabody, our location with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're here with us for Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network. Join Chad in the chat.
Just maybe thirsty, Hutton, talking about moonshine and beer.
It is Friday. Friday edition. Coming up, Spurrier's thoughts on Florida State to the SEC and other programs in the ACC to the SEC that makes sense for the old ball coach.
Hutton, sometimes you just have to say "when in Rome." That's what we have to say sometimes here when you do a show at a distillery. Got to say "when in Rome."
Hey, if you're in a legal state for sports betting, I hop on, make a wager.
They said
right?
"when in Rome"
When
in
in Rome.
Iowa at Iowa State. That's for sure.
No doubt. More players have been charged. 4 Iowa State football starters charged in a betting probe to add on to what is now upwards of a dozen that have been named now across the state of Iowa, with Iowa State and Iowa specifically. Of course, Hunter Deckers, the starting quarterback, not with the team now, defending himself, not from defenses, but from the charges that he faces. With more, we welcome in from Front Office Sports, Doug Greenberg. Doug, thank you for the time. And this continues to be, news that pops up every week in flash. They're just dropping in some more names. How deep do you think this ultimately will go?
Yeah, well, first off, thanks for having me, guys. Great to be here with you. The one thing I'll just start by saying is this is just, the state of Iowa's investigation. Obviously, as sports betting has become legalized across the country, it is so much a state-by-state thing. That was the concept of PASPA being repealed in the first place, is that states will be able to handle this in their own way. So, we could see some more from Iowa coming out. I don't know how many more players Iowa State can spare, considering they've already lost their quarterback and their starting running back. But, we might get some more from University of Iowa. There could be basketball players coming out. But the one thing to keep in mind, as I say, it's a state-by-state thing, is, Iowa is just the first state to actually be pursuing this on the college level. And I just wouldn't be surprised to hear that more states are going to start kind of pursuing this at universities pretty soon, especially now that the ball started kind of rolling in Iowa.
And criminally, I know the charges that they're facing there and the punishment that could be along with all this. But, if you have the state-by-state aspect, as you're alluding to, that could build, what does the NCAA do in terms of getting out front? Or is it way too late to do that and they have to retroactively go back and enforce the updated policy that they just announced earlier this year?
Yeah, it's a tricky spot for the NCAA to be in. According to the policies that they have, guys like Jarrell Brock, who just got named in the probe, he could be facing a lifetime ban for betting on his own team, for betting on teams at his own university. And I think from the NCAA's perspective, that's about all they can do. They can try to enforce the rules. As I said, they can launch their own investigations if they really want. But I think this whole thing is just starting to look like a sort of a black eye for the organization, and certainly it's looking like a black eye for for the individual schools. So it's really tough to say what they're going to have to do from here on out. But I think it just starts on the state level.
And so for the Iowa State running back who bet against his team, bet on Texas on the money line in a game Iowa State won 30-7. I know in the report there's no evidence that he was point shaving, throwing the game, any of that. Watching it, what happens with the charges? Obviously, college football gets a huge black eye if there's any sort of scandal about players throwing games for betting purposes. What happens with the charges, though, if it goes from you bet on your team or a program at your university to you bet on that and you tried to throw the game? You point shaved or you tried to do something that affected the integrity of the game. How does that change things?
Yeah, well, for starters, it was actually a defensive tackle who, just to clarify that. The Iowa State ended up winning that game pretty handily. So unfortunately, it's not something we had to worry about in this situation. But yeah, I mean, once point shaving comes into the equation, it gets a lot more serious. I believe that we saw it earlier this year with Alabama baseball. And that was a very serious situation with the manager, and they have taken that very seriously. It just takes this whole thing to another level because, it just gives you an idea of how much they take integrity into account by just, even if you're betting on schools on games at your own school that you're not involved in any way, they're going to punish you pretty hard. But I think if it comes out that there's legitimate point shaving going on here, I think it starts to get a lot more serious. Now, that being said, the one thing that I always talk to, my buddies in the sports betting world about is what they always say is that legal betting, and this is, obviously this is the industry line, but legal betting actually prevents things like point shaving from happening. And it helps catch it easier because, it's all regulated. It's all easier to catch. It's not to say that the point shaving can't happen, but I think especially as we're seeing all of these allegations coming out and it's all, Iowa's really getting the ball rolling here. I don't see anyone trying to point shave. I mean, granted, we saw it in Alabama, but I think you would need a pretty elaborate plot to get away with that at this point.
Doug Greenberg, our guest, Front Office Sports, with us on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. ESPN Bet is about to be a thing later this fall, and they certainly have a massive contract with the SEC moving forward after this season. They've got $1.5 billion from Penn Entertainment. I guess they go about it business as usual, but at the same time, they are heavy into college athletics. And I mean, unless as you wrote, unless there's a massive shift in what we're seeing, we are bound to see more of the same in terms of what is happening on college campuses, specifically in locker rooms.
Yeah, and this is what everybody has been trying to figure out like these last 5 years is how do you balance this business, which is, it's like alcohol, it's like legalizing marijuana, anything like that. Like these things have addictive components to them, and gambling really does have an addictive component. We saw it with Phil Mickelson this week. Obviously everybody knew about Phil's issues, but it was made concrete this week. And the thing about sports betting is just that it's so easy the way that we have it right now. It's an app, right? And that's kind of why I think these kids are getting caught up in it at these schools, is because, they can be told all they want, don't do this, don't do that, don't bet on games, no matter what it is. But when there's an app you can just download on your phone, it's so easy. And to your point, this ESPN bet, there's a reason why we thought it was such a big deal when the story broke, was because ESPN just has such an influence in the sports world, as you guys know. And to have that ESPN branding fully on top of a fully functional betting infrastructure, that is going to, that can only amplify what we've already seen. DraftKings and FanDuel are the leaders in the space right now, and that's effectively because they had a huge head start from their days as DFS providers. But ESPN's brand is so strong and Penn knows what they're doing. You know, they didn't have as much success with Barstool, but ESPN could be bombarding the airwaves with their product, and yeah, I mean, who's to say it can't get worse, right?
Yeah, and the influx of advertising from the big dogs across the betting world, we certainly see it heavy in the NFL now, and they did a complete 180 on their stance. How much, and you may not know, but I'm assuming with Front Office Sports this has been well covered. How much of the money is divvied up for college football versus NFL? It's a ton of money in the NFL. Is it similar, or do programs shy away from it while networks that pay the conferences make the money and rake in the cash?
Yeah, it's a good question. I do think that the NFL has more influence in the betting world. I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but that's not to say that these betting partnerships in colleges don't exist. Just off the top of my head, I know that the University of Colorado, notably with Deion Sanders now, they had to deal with the PointsBet, which is about to become defunct. And it's, so that's obviously, I think the NFL has much more money coming in, but that's not to say that college doesn't at all. Which again, when you're, it's a huge conflict of interest because most betting laws are for 21 plus, just the same way that alcohol is for 21 plus. And I think that we try to shy away from advertising alcohol to college kids, and we seem to not have a problem advertising betting to college kids, and half of those kids are under 21. So, it's not as prominent, but it's definitely there.
Of the states where online sports betting is legal and they have a commission and everything else that looks into this, how nervous should athletic departments in those states be that there could be a state investigation into their programs similar to what we've seen at Iowa?
They they could be pretty nervous. As I kind of said at the beginning here, Iowa and Iowa State are the schools that are getting in trouble for this right now. But I am almost positive they are not the only schools across the country that have been doing things like this. As I said, we already saw it in Alabama. That was a little bit different because that was point shaving, but college kids at Iowa State are not necessarily any different from kids in Michigan and Ohio. Ohio has had a couple of instances already. They've flown a little bit under the radar compared to Iowa. But you look at Colorado, like I talked about, New Jersey, which has been, one of the most prominent states when it comes to betting. And there's, some prominent universities that are there. As I said, I think there could be more coming. I'm starting to do my own investigating into that and see if we can get ahead of where the next one is going to come from. But, there's also the possibility that Iowa is going to kind of serve as an example for these other schools. And maybe we'll start to see, a little bit of that kind of start to slow down. They're kind of being made an example of right now by their own state commission. And maybe these other state commissions are thankful that Iowa is doing this.
Doug Greenberg has been our guest for Front Office Sports, as you covered on all of the business side of sports it never ends. And deep dives happen on the regular. I would highly suggest signing up at Front Office Sports for the newsletter as well. Doug, thank you as always, man. And hopefully we'll catch up soon. Great work.
All right. Yep. Thank you so much, guys. Yep. Appreciate it.
There's Doug Greenberg. You can follow him on social at Doug Greenberg.
Very good. And I would be very, very nervous if I'm a big program in one of those states.
It's also,
you just hope this doesn't happen to you.
Absolutely. And it's just, I think the money is about the same. I think it's just funneled in a different way, where the NFL has, you've got the Caesars Superdome down in New Orleans, on the side of the building where the Saints play. Of course, there's a team in Vegas now, and every individual team can negotiate their own wagering deal locally if they so choose for advertising dollars. But I think the difference in college is, the individual universities may not all be taking the cash in, but the networks that then pay those universities through the conference contract certainly are leaning into that full speed ahead. And so the money that they're getting is in part due to the advertising dollars of what we're seeing with these apps that are everywhere on game day.
And it kind of goes back to the Johnny Football documentary where he's saying, we're looking at all these people making all this money off Johnny, and we decide we're going to get a piece of the pie. And we're going to do it, and that's how you justify it. I'm sure there are guys that are thinking, look at all the money coming in because of sports betting and all the money that's happening to our school, so why not us? And they justify it that way.
The SEC has downplayed further expansion, saying, hey, we're at 16. We don't need different time zones. We're already a super conference. But in listening and reading Steve Spurrier's comments, I think there's more behind the scenes than just we're set at 16. Details next on Hot Mic.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader.
I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life.
ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I just think the way Anthony Bass handled this was so sloppy.
Oh, I think it's perfect.
And
I mean,
what he reposted
he
and how he did it.
He bent the knee and bowed. He was going to catch the ceremonial first pitch.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
When you're behind closed doors, when you're talking to plant managers, when you're having meetings, when you're with the team, was there an acknowledgement of any of this, an acknowledgement of the situation, the boycott, and then the doubling down about moving away from the fratty image?
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people. I'm pissed off about this. I never did it before in my life, but Trump is being cheated. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, the second hour is here. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network, the Friday edition. We're going to get you to the weekend. You can do that with us, live streaming on the YouTube channel, Twitter, Facebook, and more. OutKick.com is also where you can find us. Or if you're listening to this great radio partner, we say thank you and cheers to the weekend.
Mental note for future primary complaint. Been watching a lot of Little League Baseball, the regional finals, getting ready for Williamsport. Little League Baseball umpires. This is not a complaint about the umpires. I'm glad they do it. And I believe most of them are volunteers. They just get paid like room and board and travel to go from their local Little Leagues to go do it. So good for them. But if you make the strike call, do it a little bit faster, please. This is
get that TV time.
My cousin just sent me a text. He said, it feels like 1996 when I was waiting on dial-up internet to wait for the strike call from the umpire. I mean, it is a solid 2 to 3 seconds before they stand up and make a strike call to where the batter has to turn around, and there's all this intrigue about whether or not it's going to be a ball or a strike. It's like in Gladiator when they call for the execution.
And you're looking for the
end of it, and you just put the hand out, and you want to go thumb up or thumbs down. I mean, there is a long, long delay in waiting for these things.
And Chad
it's
has a family member playing.
Yes, I do. In fact, he's at bat right now on Big ESPN. I just looked down and
time to go yard.
Just fouled one off.
Time to go yard.
This scoreless game, by the way, I believe both pitchers are throwing a no-hitter currently, and they're into the fourth. They play 6 innings. So we've got quite the pitcher's duel happening.
Chad, the SEC and through Greg Sankey, they're saying, hey, we're content with 16 teams, programs. We're already a super conference. We're not rushing. I agree they're not rushing right now, but they are going to add at least 4 more, if not more, whenever we see a massive shift across the college conference landscape, which is still to be determined, what happens with the ACC and the Big 12. But the reason for patience is the Big 10 seems content with now the 4 that they've added, with USC, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon coming in. And we know that the ACC has a grant of rights and a media contract with ESPN, partnered now moving forward after this season with the Southeastern Conference. But in thinking about, and Mike Bianchi had Steve Spurrier on his show, Open Mic with Mike Bianchi is the name of it. And Spurrier, of course, Hall of Famer, Heisman winner, Florida, South Carolina.
The old ball coach.
He was asked if he would be in favor of Florida State joining the SEC. Quote, yeah, if they come into the SEC, heck, I think that would be good. And maybe bring Miami or Clemson. I guess there would be another team that would be a possibility too. And then he rolls into, I think they had the chance right before they joined the ACC to maybe come into the SEC, talking about Florida State. And I remember Bobby Bowden said, quote, I don't want to play that schedule. Alabama, Auburn, Tennessee, Georgia. Of course, their schedule was tough enough since they played us in Miami. But then he goes back and he goes, I would just sit back and say, how come Alabama and Tennessee are not playing Florida State like we have to do each year? So he's all for the power schools in the ACC now joining and making a power schedule. This is where we're headed. And Florida State, while they may not have the juice right now solo, if they were to pair up and have some allies, the big ones, Clemson is immediate, but there needs to be 2 others. You can do exactly what just happened in the Big Ten and do it within a region of the country that makes sense for the SEC, makes sense for the media partner, and certainly makes sense for the top brands in the ACC who are not content with the money that they're getting. But the key with all this is the rush. Is there a push? Is there pressure to make a move for fear of what the Big Ten will do? I don't think for a minute they're worried within the SEC offices about the Big 12 or the ACC talking expansion. But if Florida State and Clemson started chatting it up with the Big Ten, you better believe that the Super Conference already has 16 teams and the SEC would soon be 18, based on that threat of the better brands going to the Big Ten while you have the chance to expand and chose not to.
The one thing that may trip it up, and I agree with pretty much everything you're saying, Hutton, is spreading the wealth, and that's what they don't want to do ultimately. So we had Andy Staples on yesterday. He talked about it and said, could you still make the argument that even though the Big Ten has 2 more programs coming in than the SEC, that the SEC is still the better football product in conference? Yeah, you can make that argument. So even if they add more teams, does it make it better? And is it so good that you're willing to share the wealth with those programs you're bringing in? Texas and Oklahoma was a no-brainer for the SEC. Yes, they bring enough pop and pizzazz and brand awareness that we're willing to share our wealth with them. Is that the case at Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, whoever else you're looking at, Miami? Maybe, maybe not. I hear these quotes from Steve Spurrier, and first thing I think is, and I love Greg Sankey, what an entertaining world it would be if Steve Spurrier was commissioner of the SEC with things that he would say just off the cuff. Yeah, heck, why not? Come on, bring him in. Florida State, whoever else, we can make it happen. Steve Spurrier, not a politician, and I love that about him. Always says exactly what he's thinking, and this is another one of those times. Chip Kelly's idea that we hit on yesterday of, I got a plan. Let's everyone go independent. 64 teams can now comprise the one division. The other 64 group of 5 teams can be another one. They compete for a title. We compete for a title. That sounds great. And it sounds easy and clean, and you've got a central governing body, and you've got geographic divisions for college football and all of that. But it would require a bunch of schools to take a pay cut and to say, okay, now we're going to collectively bargain together, and we're all going to take less money if you're an SEC school or a Big Ten school. Not going to happen. And again, the one thing I think will hold this up is greed, and not the type of greed you're thinking about that, hey, we've got to gobble up all these programs and get them in right now because the other schools are. It's the greed of not wanting to share your money with them because the SEC's got it really good right now. Big Ten's got it good. Now, it didn't stop them from adding Oregon and Washington, and I think that was more of a convenience thing because their conference was falling apart, and they accepted them knowing it's going to be value added for years to come. But would the SEC really want to share that paycheck? They're not in a position where they have to yet. So I still think Notre Dame's going to be the big domino to fall one way or the other. And when that happens, if that's a Big Ten ad, then your plan, Hutton, and what Steve Spurrier's saying, to me, that's the ignition key that starts the engine. And all of a sudden, those big buyouts to get out of the ACC, not quite as big for Florida State, North Carolina, Clemson, others that the SEC would covet. But I really think that it's probably Notre Dame that's going to trigger that one way or the other.
But also, so Cal and Stanford were discussed for the ACC, but they were, what came up at the president's meeting was revenue. What is there added revenue? Are we going to make more based on the addition? Well, and they chose not to, of course. If you're looking at it from that angle, I don't know of other brands from the Southeastern Conference's perspective of who you would add if you're not going to add Clemson and Florida State. Notre Dame, of course, anybody's taking Notre Dame, automatic. But outside of that, who of the Irish, who would you point to that's available of who you would want to bring in other than those 2 programs? And we're specifically looking at, of course, the football value. There's more than that within the ACC. And, Chad, I think the other thing that would take, aside from Notre Dame, is if you could bring in an Amazon or someone else, a major company, another power player, to come in and add more assets to the television agreement. And within this, you're building to the super conference rivalry where you have the haves and the have-nots, and Amazon gets a piece of the pie of whatever you're going to build for a college football playoff and a true national champion for how we'll view it in a few years. Many believe it's sooner rather than later. Others believe it's going to be a bit further down the line as we see what happens with the other 2 conferences that remain other than the Big Ten and the SEC. But there's one thing I know certain. It is Greg Sankey's not sitting back saying, we're good. Nothing to discuss here. There's constant discussion at the SEC offices and from his power players and from the network he's about to join and partner up with.
Well, remember when both Petiti and Sankey were, we don't want to be the ones that cause the demise of a conference. We are very much about money and what's best for our conferences, but we're not the Grim Reaper. So now the Big Ten has convinced themselves they can sleep at night because, well, guys, their conference fell apart and we just took the scraps.
The Big 12 did it, not
We
us.
didn't do it. Klyavnikov did it to himself, and we took Oregon. And what precipitated that was us raiding them for USC and UCLA, but whatever happened left was just us taking the scraps off the table that had been blown up by their own conference commissioner. So they sleep well at night with that. I say that to get to this point because I don't think that either commissioner would be willing to sleep soundly at night knowing they would do this. But if I am a third-party consultant and I have no allegiances one way or the other, and I'm looking at the landscape and saying it is all about media money, it's all about who can make the most, it's all about eyeballs, it's all about who has the biggest brand, and I have to give a business tip to Greg Sankey about what he should do next in conference realignment, it is get rid of Missouri and Vandy and add North Carolina and Clemson, or add Clemson and Florida State. Because you cannot tell me, in terms of sharing the wealth, that if you went to ESPN whenever that contract is up and said, what if we got rid of Vanderbilt and Missouri and brought you Clemson and Florida State, two of the biggest brands in all of college football to add to this television package, and we're still splitting it 16 ways. We're not adding it to 18. We're not cutting the shares down. This would equate to how much more money for each of the 16 schools.
But part of it, though,
if it is just dollars and cents, that would make each program more money.
But I can't help but think that from the ESPN, ABC, Disney perspective, what are they currently looking for in exchange? I don't think they care how the SEC divvies it up, right? It's about
no, they don't care about that.
Programming. So if you're taking away two
it's
and
about
adding
what it's
two,
worth.
But you have to think of it from, okay, where's our content compared to the content that the Big Ten is offering with 20? So I think they would be in favor of the network, I'm saying, adding more, not subtracting, just simply based on the fact that in March and February and March, you want to have content on all the channels pointing back to the media contract that you've signed for the conference that's the most valuable. But can the conference give you enough programming, live programming, to hit all of the different markers that they're looking at on that particular weeknight?
And we're talking about two different goals. What ESPN wants is to pay the least for the most amount of inventory and the best possible product to then take to market and go get advertisers and get people subscribed to ESPN Plus to watch those games and get big ratings. What the SEC wants is the most money for each member school. So from the SEC's business perspective, if they want the most money for their member schools, they cut out two programs that aren't bringing in as much money, and they bring in two that will bring them more money in the next contract, which they're going to get a little bit more money regardless, even if Vandy and Missouri is still in there. But I'm saying we're not that far off if we're going to be this cutthroat and we're going to kill a conference the way the Big Ten just did and what the Pac-12 helped do to themselves. What's to stop a conference from saying, it would be better if we replace these four programs with these four, or we moved this one around and brought this one in, because in the next television negotiation, we're going to get slightly more for these brands, and if we keep the number at a certain level, the distribution goes way up for our member schools.
But I look at it from the next contract for both Big Ten and SEC will be some type of partnership between all the networks. The Fox and CBS for years, one had the NFC, one had the AFC. So you can bring in what you're currently doing with ESPN and ABC and still have the partnership with the Big Ten for whatever the super conference is going to be, and you spread it out across all these different platforms. But you've got to have the juice and the content, the live programming to service all of those different live streams, plus the heavy linear TV, where the big brands are going to be. So I do think you have to load up in some degree. Even if it's not ESPN that wants to pay more, you can get another massive company like Amazon that has done all these trials with different sports and in different ways to get subscribers to jump on board at a second tier level that gives you more money based on the aspect that you have more content to provide.
Yeah, what would a Friday night game of the week for the SEC
in
a future contract do on Prime Video? or Apple TV Plus or whatever it may be. It could be a big revenue generator.
But they'll have to have more teams in order to have that deal.
Yeah. David in the YouTube chat says there's going to be plenty of TV money for the 64 Super League. I agree, but why 64? If I'm talking about maximizing revenue, take the 32 top brands across the country. And how much money's in that? You know what that is? It's called the NFL. That's the 32 top brands for Sunday and Monday and Thursday in the NFL. Now take the top 32 brands in college football that generate the most interest and the most ratings, and think about the money those 32 teams could split if they collectively negotiated TV deals across every network. Just like who? Oh, the NFL. That's what they do. They get in on every network, and they get in on streaming and everything else. College football could do the same. It could just be a 32-team league. Like, why? I'm not advocating for these things. I'm simply an observer of what's happening, and I'm telling you, if you want to go evil genius, this is how far you go with it. Why 64? Why am I cutting a check to Wake Forest if I'm one of these schools? Why not just bring the ones that matter, that are actually bringing all the interest in? I mean, it's not far-fetched to think this is where we're headed, if money's going to drive every decision.
For football especially, no doubt. Speaking of decisions, coming up, we have two options. Neither is really a great option, but we have to pick our poison. We'll go across the NFL. We've got some college football discussion and more. That's straight ahead. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick Network.
Do you feel as if, well, I'm pretty certain I know your answer because I know how I felt in college. I had to take, my major was actually chemistry at first as well, and I had to take a lot of ethics courses and different, I actually took a gender study course as well. And I felt like I had to tailor my papers a certain way to get a good grade. And what I'm noticing is across the country, that's the consensus. Even in the South, like where I went, University of Kentucky, we felt this way. And so I entirely agree with you that this is, it's happening all over. About the backlash, how I mentioned, she came out and essentially used the argument of your argument was based in white supremacy. Have you gotten a lot of backlash, or do you just kind of get the name calling, such as being called a racist for saying freedom of speech should exist?
Isn't that crazy to be called a racist? Calling out being suppressed in school. It's so weird to see where people's heads are at. But yeah, there has been a lot of backlash, a lot of name calling, obviously. And the death threats are I'm going to show up at your house. I'm like, okay, please do.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a lot of that. And like, I haven't had a ton of questioning of what I'm saying because they actually have no objection to what I'm saying. They're just like, you're transphobic. And I'm like, okay, but you have no real argument. That says a lot more about you than me. And it says that my argument is real and I actually am saying the truth and you can't even argue against that. So you're just going to call me a name.
And I love that you can acknowledge that, because this cancel culture that we live in, they want you to think you'll be canceled. They want you to be scared of the name calling. But that really is all it is. And it speaks more to their insecurities than it does to yours. I saw people on TikTok, Olivia. I saw people coming for your eyebrows. Is that what they're going to resort to? And you're right. It's because they can't dissuade from your argument, which is actually really powerful. And it should boost your confidence. I think when people can look at a situation and take the negative, such as the backlash you're getting, which does suck. There's no taking away from that. It's not fun. It's not enjoyable. It does take a toll on you. But if you can take that backlash you're getting and ultimately use it to fuel your argument, I wish more people had that same perspective that you have. But what about the positive? Have you received a lot of good feedback? Have you had a lot of doors being open for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the opportunities that I have had are just absolutely incredible. And the support from people like you and all these other speakers who've spoken up about, men in their sports. And the ones that really stick out to me are actually the parents of young girls who are messaging me and saying, I have 2 daughters who are running cross country just like you did. Thank you so much for protecting them. Thank you so much for sticking up for them in their futures. And I'm like, that's why I'm doing this. It's not
Oh my
really
gosh.
for me. It's for all of these other girls, and not even just girls, but for college students, for young men, like all of these people. I want to help them. I mean, America was built on freedom of speech. That's why we are what we are. And colleges are now trying to take that away. And like we said earlier, it's going down a bad path.
You know, Olivia, you sound like you're filled with hate. You sound just super hateful. No, how could anyone listen to your argument and say that that's hateful? I mean, I hear the compassion coming from your voice, advocating for what you're advocating for. It really is for everyone, all ages, all sexual orientations, even all gender identities. That's who you're advocating for, to be able to speak freely.
Coming up in an hour, Bernard Pollard, former NFL safety, will join us. Hope everyone's having a great Friday. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow rolls on across the OutKick network. Chad, not many good options whenever you're just trying to pare it down to two and you have to pick your poison. But we have to pick our poison with some bad solutions.
Two bad options.
Bets.
We have to pick the best of the bad options. I think
we'll
is
try.
the premise for this.
Yeah, Davey Hudson joins us here at 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Davey, you've got two options across the football landscape for us, and we will have to put our money where our mouth is here.
That I do, Hut, with the NFL preseason starting back, college football right around the corner. I was trying to think of some interesting questions to where it's like you guys just have some terrible options, but hey, you got to convince me one way or another. And so to pick your poison for our first question that we're going to go with, which team will have the better season, the Indianapolis Colts or the Houston Texans?
And I'll let you start on this one. This is, by the way, this is just really bad to even think about with both these teams, but I'll let you start.
I'm pretty confident that the answer is Houston with the Texans. C.J. Stroud, they know who their rookie starter is. Meanwhile, Anthony Richardson is battling with Gardner Minshew right now, and they're probably going to end up playing two quarterbacks, even though I know Richardson's starting the preseason game for them. And here's why I also like Houston. I like some of the young defensive pieces. I also like what they've done in the backfield, because for a rookie quarterback and at least three veteran offensive linemen in front of them, the running game is going to be paramount for their success. They have Dameon Pierce, who's back. They have signed Devin Singletary, and they also have John Mechie coming back at wide receiver. So, and that's a great story and great news. Look, I'm taking Houston. It's not by much, but who knows who's running the football for Indy, and they're about to go with a rookie quarterback that needs a year. Will Levis is in a good spot because at best he's the backup to Ryan Tannehill. At best for Anthony Richardson, he is going to have the crap kicked out of him weekly because he doesn't have a running game right now to rely on because Jonathan Taylor's not there and the backup to him is already injured.
So if this is just a better season, who has the better record, my answer could be different than who you feel better about at the end of the season.
This is just better record, right?
Better record, right, is what you're saying?
That is where I'm at, but I like your take on it, Chad, if you have a different answer on who you're going to be feeling better about at the end of the year.
I think there's a solid chance that the Colts end up with the better record, but we're going to feel a lot better about C.J. Stroud, DeMeco Ryans, and the Texans moving forward from here on out. Because I think he's going to have a better year than Anthony Richardson whenever Anthony Richardson starts. And it starts and ends with the quarterback. So if you feel better about the quarterback, you're going to feel better about that team moving forward. Let's say even though the Texans might have win one fewer game. So under that premise, I think the better season is going to be the Texans, even if the record is very close, because I believe in Stroud more than Richardson. I don't like to start with DeMeco Ryan starting Stroud behind no offensive line and having him run for his life in preseason game number 1. But I've got more faith in that situation now moving forward. So I'm going to go Houston Texans on better season.
Gotcha. Look, I mean, the Colts also implementing a new first-time head coach. So
yep,
we'll see what happens there, guys. And speaking of the head coach, I mean, if it's not hiring season, it's firing season. So my second question about the coaches, which coach do you think will get fired first? Mike McCarthy in Dallas or Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland?
See, now, if we're going pick your poison and you wanted to flip this, you could say, which coach wins the Super Bowl first with their current team? Because then that's a bad, it's good. It's an easy decision to say one of these guys might get fired. But you got to pick your poison of which one's the Super Bowl winning head coach, McCarthy or Stefanski. Here's the schedule for the Browns. Cincy at Pittsburgh, Titans at home, Baltimore, bye week. The answer is Kevin Stefanski, because if they start 0-4 with their investment in Deshaun Watson and they start 0-3 in division, he could get fired in that early bye week after 4 games. And I think they got a chance to lose all 4 of those games. Not likely to happen, but certainly a chance they could be without
Burrow.
That would be a huge boost to them if so. So I'm going to go Stefanski for that reason. Cowboys play at the Giants, Jets at home, tough. At Arizona, not tough. New England at home, not tough. At San Francisco, at the Chargers, then a bye week. Also 2 tough games back-to-back. So Hutton, it certainly is pick your poison with those 2 schedules to start before the bye week. But I know you and I always like to look at it. When's the bye week?
Yeah.
If you're going to make a move in season, a lot of times it's at the bye week. So what happens before the bye?
So, yeah, and you're right. I lean towards Stefanski over McCarthy. And it just comes down to the offensive vision. Columnists in Cleveland are saying that Deshaun Watson may need to be patient as this offense comes along. And I'm thinking that the patience aspect is only asked of through Stefanski, because Stefanski goes into it thinking, okay, we've loaded up. We've got a fully guaranteed contract with Deshaun Watson. We have now options at wide receiver. We have brought in different pieces. But our best chance of winning is turning around and handing off the football. That doesn't track with what Deshaun Watson did so well in the end of his tenure in Houston. So I think there may be a butting of heads there. And unlike other quarterbacks, Watson has, and some quarterbacks have this, but the vast majority, Watson has this. He's not mentioned in the same talent sphere. But based on the contract, he's an NBA player looking at a head coach thinking, we're going to do this. He's got that power now that Haslam gave it to him. So I think it's more on Stefanski. Meanwhile, McCarthy at least took back control of the offense. Kellen Moore's not there. He's now with the Chargers. And they do have a jam-packed roster full of talent that won 12 games a year ago with a quarterback that only played in 12 games and threw a ton of picks. The downfall of McCarthy will be the kicking game. They can't find a kicker in a battle right now between two guys to even hit consecutive kicks from like 35 to 40 yards. In fact, the 2 went back and forth this past weekend and went 1 for 6. And we know how the playoffs ended. Brett Maher is long forgotten, but he missed 5 kicks and, got cut. So
imagine losing your job because of the kicker, your kicking situation.
But
most coaches lose their job because they don't get the quarterback right. Imagine losing, or a coordinator. Imagine losing your job because you couldn't find a kicker.
Yeah.
And that could be where they are.
In the moment, it will be looked at as, it's not on him. But in the offseason, it's a record, and no one remembers the details of how things went down. So I think both guys could end up on the street. I just think it's Stefanski first more than I think it's McCarthy, Davey.
Gotcha. The one point I'd like to add to that conversation is I view both of these owners as complete wild cards when you're looking at Jerry Jones and you're looking at Jimmy Haslam. So I view them as unpredictable. But
that's a good point.
Sticking within the state of Ohio, we'll talk about that battle, come November, Michigan or Ohio State. A lot of people, that's that Big Ten matchup we're looking at. But which team do you think will lose first, Michigan or Ohio State?
Hutton, there can always be a surprise, but like the Georgia schedule, for instance, right? Everyone is all over that because Georgia is a double-digit favorite in all but one game, according to Vegas, throughout their 12-game regular season. That's in Knoxville, second to last game of the year. Games aren't played on paper. But in the preseason, when we're getting psyched up for games, all we can do is look at the paper and play the games out on paper. So I played these games out on paper and looked at Ohio State and Michigan's schedule. And the big question for me is, can Notre Dame win at home against Ohio State? That game happens in September, on September 23rd. If not, I don't think you're going to see even a possible loss on the schedule before they play each other, except for Michigan at Penn State on November 11th. I'm going to go Ohio State because they also play Penn State. Penn State always plays them tough, but they do get Penn State in Columbus this year on October 21st. But because they have those two games at Notre Dame late November or late September and Penn State at home in late October, before Michigan really gets their first on paper huge test, which is a road trip to Penn State, I'm going to play the odds here a little bit and say they're going to drop one to either Marcus Freeman's squad and Notre Dame, or Aller's going to be terrific and they're going to drop the one to Penn State in October before Michigan plays Penn State in November.
I think it's Ohio State because they get Penn State the week prior, right? October 21st is when they will play Penn State. They then follow up with a game against Wisconsin, and Wisconsin is not on Michigan's schedule. So back-to-back weeks, they get Penn State and Wisconsin, and I think that's where Ohio State slips up. I mean, I'm looking at Michigan's schedule right now, and I don't see a blip on the radar, although there are always shocking surprises. Regardless of Harbaugh's coaching or not those first 4 weeks, it's not happening there. But back-to-back road games at Nebraska, at Minnesota, I mean, I don't know how we label that as tough right now, especially considering they have a top 3 defense in the country currently, talent that they've acquired through the transfer portal to help out the defense and work pieces that they've lost. And then they have the Corum and Edwards back in the backfield to go with J.J. Edwards, or McCarthy, excuse me. So, yeah, give me Michigan to have the better record and the unbeaten record prior to Ohio State. But it's going to take a while, Davey. This is into November, end of October, early November when we're talking about a loss.
Maybe all that exercise for penalty or whatever it was called, disciplinary exercise that Minnesota's been going through will push them through in that game. Probably not, though.
Although Michigan is circling Georgia now and not Ohio State. So maybe that plays a factor.
Eye off the ball.
Well, guys, moving on to our final pick your poison for today. Which quarterback will be more productive, Jimmy Garoppolo or Derek Carr?
Chad, give us the update on Jimmy G's best target.
So going through, getting ready for this topic earlier, I look and I'm like, let's look at who else is on the roster right now with the Raiders as pass-catching options for Garoppolo outside Davante Adams. And immediately I saw 7 minutes before I actually searched this, Davante Adams leaves the field with a right leg injury because Travarius Ward of the 49ers in the first play of 11-on-11 at their joint practice hits him, and he goes down. He's on the ground for a while and has to leave for the locker room after being injured. That does not bode well for the Raiders or for Jimmy Garoppolo in this one. To me, the answer is Derek Carr. Chris Olave, Michael Thomas, hopefully back, playing well again. I like New Orleans' roster better. Hutton, I think there is a scenario sort of like the Texans-Colts answer for me, where Garoppolo, if Adams is healthy throughout the year, will look better statistically, but we're not going to leave the season thinking he played better than Derek Carr, because I think the Saints are in a pretty good spot in that division to do some damage, and I think Derek Carr is one of those guys who's just good enough to put up a bit of a revenge season with the Saints for how it ended in Vegas. I'm going Derek Carr on this one.
Garoppolo wins, but he wins with pieces around him. Josh Jacobs is not there. He's disgruntled. He's not happy. Meanwhile, you could say the same behind what's going on behind Derek Carr because Kamara is suspended early in the season. But at least they have a plan in the backfield, knowing that the likelihood was he was going to face a suspension. They've got Jamal Williams, who comes over from Detroit. They've got a couple of rookies behind him as well, and they have the receiving options. Davante Adams he limped off the field today, not carted off, and he was pointing at his calf, according to reporters. Josh McDaniel says he doesn't think it's super serious. is the way he phrased it, I believe. But beyond that, no real update on the right leg injury for Adams. But they're just, I mean, I'm thinking about Jimmy G's rosters, and when it's needed to rely on a run game, it's been there. And right now, you can't turn around and hand the football off to Josh Jacobs based on the way things are going in Las Vegas. That's a big concern. And when he gets there, Chad, you mentioned this yesterday, like, do you have to get your legs under you a bit?
Yeah.
What's that going to be like? He's not happy, and I wouldn't be happy if I'm Jimmy G, because Adams and Jacobs are not going to be at practice for a bit.
Well, and I'm blinded by some of this because, and rightfully so, you lean towards the franchise you think is in better shape. And I just think the Saints setup is better, especially within their division, than the Raiders right now under Josh McDaniels, right? So I look at it that way and think that's why Derek Carr is set up well.
We're taking Carr, surprisingly, the former Raiders quarterback, against the current one who actually wins at a higher rate.
I agree with you. And the only thing I'd like to add is it's not so much what they have around them, it's what they're having to face against. And if you look at New Orleans' schedule, a lot easier than the Raiders. And, I mean, that defense for New Orleans, they don't play. I think Trevor Lawrence is the best quarterback they'll face. And you look at it within their division, you get Bryce Young twice, you get Desmond Ridder twice, Kyle Trask or Baker Mayfield twice. It's a lot of opportunities for that defense to set Derek Carr up into a nice position. Can he take advantage?
6 of your 17 games will come against those quarterbacks. 1 second-year guy.
And then you have the AFC
mid-round
South.
pick, 1 number 1 overall pick, but a rookie, and then Baker Mayfield.
And the AFC South is also saying the same thing about the NFC South. Well, at least we don't have the NFC North this year. We get the South. Coming up.
Someone's got to lose, though.
More headlines, including NFL Plus, and they're helping out the fans. Let's get weird.
Hey, Davey Hudson of OutKick here. We are at SEC Media Days 2023 in Nashville, Tennessee. We're going to go talk to some players, see what they have to say. What's the best purchase you've made from an NIL deal so far?
Tag watch right here.
Far.
Best purchase? I probably just give it back to my son for real. That's probably my best purchase every time.
Man, pay my truck off. Definitely.
A house. My wife and I bought a house, so that's been huge. Being able to save that money up and buy a house.
This chain here.
The best purchase? I'd probably say helping my mom out with school.
Ooh, the best purchase? Probably the shoes. The shoes I got on right now.
The best purchase I made, well, the best NIL deal I've had is free steaks from Marksbury Farms, so keep me fed and beefed up.
With it?
Ooh, purchase? Probably a new golf bag. Or recently I played TPC Sawgrass this past weekend.
Through college, helping my family out a lot. That's probably my best purchase I've done.
Best purchase? Probably my my mom and dad anniversary gift.
The best purchase I've made. I got a yoga mat the other day, and that's helped me a lot. Just flexibility and everything like that. So probably that.
Best purchase? My smile. Best purchase? I would say my best purchase was having my school supply drive.
Landon, what is your favorite sports movie of all time?
Remember the Titans for sure. Sport movie, I say Love and Basketball. That's my favorite.
Got to be Remember the Titans, for sure.
Remember the Titans. I mean, it's top movie ever.
Probably Longest Yard.
I'd probably say Like Mike with Bow Wow.
Yeah.
My favorite sports movie, Remember the Titans.
Air Bud.
Perfect answer, actually.
I really don't know. I don't have one.
Movie? I haven't seen many, but does Sandlot count?
Favorite sports movie of all time? Probably Coach Carter.
Ooh, sports movie. Probably The Express.
Happy Gilmore.
The Little Giants.
Amari, what was your most favorite sports movie growing up?
Remember the Titans.
Barbie or Oppenheimer? Which one are you and the boys seeing first?
I don't know the other one, but definitely not Barbie.
Oppenheimer, got to be. I'm not against the Barbie movie, though. I tried to recommend it. I was shut down pretty fast.
Oppenheimer. Come on now. You don't need to ask me that question. Oppenheimer looks good, though.
What's Oppenheimer?
It's a movie about the atomic bomb. It's the big thing that comes out this Thursday.
Yeah, probably that.
Oppenheimer.
Wait, what was the other one?
Barbie or Oppenheimer?
The opposite of Barbie. The opposite of Barbie. Yeah, so I'm not.
We're gonna see Oppenheimer and then follow with Barbie.
Solid choice.
I don't even know Oppenheimer is. I don't want to see Barbie though.
Oppenheimer, 100%.
Oppenheimer.
Oppenheimer.
Say a little bit louder.
Oppenheimer.
Oh, we're gonna watch both of them. Maybe on the same night. We'll probably watch. I think you gotta watch Barbie first, just so you're not. Oppenheimer might be a little too intense. You know what I'm saying? So you warm up with Barbie and then you go to the Oppenheimer.
The second one. Oppenheimer.
Barbie or Oppenheimer? Which one are you and the boys seeing first?
Barbie.
Glad you're with us. 6th and Peabody, our location. Friday edition with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow rolls on. We've got Bernard Pollard, former Raven safety, and Titan safety, who will join us coming up in about 40 minutes or so. Always a great conversation from the opinionated veteran of the league. Find out who the pretenders are in the league right now.
Bernard Pollard.
Not a fan of quarterbacks.
Not a beta.
No.
He's never been the type to not air his opinion on anything, so can't wait for this.
Jed York, the 49ers owner CEO, he is facing a pair of lawsuits pertaining to a college cheating scandal and then also alleged insider trading based on the company. Chegg. Have you heard of this? Chegg?
No. Davey had just mentioned it to me and asked if we had this when I was in college, and I had to inform Davey we barely had the internet when I started college.
Yeah.
My first email address came in college because I
Really?
had to get one
No,
when I got to college.
I'm probably right there with
You're also
no,
younger.
No,
You're
no,
younger
no,
than
no,
I
no.
am. So
I had to get an email address in order to have Yahoo Messenger.
Okay. I just used my buddy's
And
AOL Messenger.
Facebook wasn't around until college for me. That's when
Facebook was like
campus to campus.
04, I think is when it started.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of the
somewhere around
movie
there.
Social Network.
Yeah.
Right around 04. So that's the year I was graduating college is when.
And it was campus only.
Yeah, I didn't have Facebook until they allowed old people to get on after I was out of college. Remember for a while, it's like if you went to college, you could get on it, but you had to be in college for a while. I think I was at the cutoff where if you went to a college, you could join Facebook, and that's when I joined in like 08, 07, somewhere around there.
So he's a part of the Chegg company. It's an online educational service. It became popular during the pandemic, where every single college course was conducted virtually, and you could see how stock prices would soar for a company that's online educational service based. It reached over $113 per share in February of 2021. And then, that popularity, whenever you're actually back in class, back on campus, they then offered the service of looking up answers to test questions and then would provide that for you. So that's the cheating part of it. And the insider trading would be knowing that the cheating scandal was going to happen, selling those shares at the peak performance prior to it considerably dropping based on news getting out about the cheating scandal.
Not the headline I expected with the 49ers with all of this. Didn't be looking into this, and then that. Very unfortunate for them.
Maybe Davey has a tie-in with cheating. We'll find out. It's time for Let's Get Weird.
And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, talking now.
Guys, with our first story today, I have some bad news to share. We did have a death by an Italian man. And whenever I think of worse ways to go out, this is definitely at the top. I personally do not like cheese at all. I will not eat cheese. But we have this comes from Italy, a 74-year-old local producer of a Parmesan hard-crusted cheese, and he died after a 30-foot high shelf full of thousands of pounds of cheese fell on him.
Oh.
Being from Italy, though, this may be the way to go.
How much again? What was the weight that fell on him?
Well, they said there were 15,000 cheese wheels that were aging in this place, and there was a 30-foot high shelf that was holding these wheels, and they said each wheel would weigh about 45 pounds.
Can we discuss your not liking cheese? Is this like a lactose intolerance issue?
I grew out of the allergy. I did have it, grew out of it. And I don't know, man. I was like 5 and I was at a birthday party and had some pizza. And for whatever reason, like as soon as I ate one piece, just threw up everywhere. And then it's just like the smell ever since then.
So now it's like PTSD.
Oh, it sticks around with you.
Yeah, the smell's the worst. And then just the texture of it, I hate it. I think I've been on a rant about the nacho cheese smell as well. Just god awful.
So you don't like pizza?
No. Well, I'll order pizza without cheese. So people think I'm weird for that.
Bread and sauce.
On brand.
That's not pizza.
You get pepperoni, bacon, a couple
you get
peppers.
bread, you get the crust, sauce, and then put toppings on it with no cheese.
And then you tell them you want extra sauce because no cheese would dry out the crust a little bit quicker. So
yeah. Well, I don't think this is uncommon though, Chad, based on those who are lactose intolerant.
Well, but you're not lactose intolerant anymore. I think you need to overcome your fear.
I've kind of cut out dairy altogether.
I don't think it's that you don't like. Well, now we're getting into something different. That you're just cutting out dairy. I don't think it's that you don't like the taste of cheese. It's that you don't like the memory of being 5, having one slice of pizza and throwing up everywhere.
I've tried it on other occasions, and it doesn't do it for me.
That's rough growing up without pizza, though.
I had a friend in high school who loved Taco Bell and ate it all the time and got food poisoning one time from a Taco Bell. And it can't even, drive by a Taco Bell and see a sign without feeling like she was going to get sick.
It's weird.
From that point on because of the PTSD from it.
You
could not eat it ever again.
I saw a meme the other day. It's like Alexander Graham Bell. He's like, I'm working on this new thing called the phone. He's like, and then it just went to his brother Taco. He's like, I got some pretty big stuff in the works too.
So something I learned, I'm glad you brought this up, Davey, that Taco Bell, it was the guy's name. I didn't know that. Glenn Bell formed Taco Bell. I just thought the Taco Bell was the bell. It was like a bell ringing for the dinner bell for taco. No, it's the guy's name. Glenn Bell started Taco Bell. Had it. This is Food That Built America, one of my favorite shows on History Channel.
We talked about that when we had
Started it with and he had an investor come in, and I think it was Taco Tia. Yeah, Taco Tia was the restaurant they started. Wildly successful, San Bernardino, California, and he wanted to franchise it. And his buddy that gave him the money said, "No, we're making enough here. Let's not risk it." So he had to basically get bought out of that enterprise. Then he started Taco Bell. And the guy who didn't invest with him from that point on hated it because he made millions.
Just back to the cheese briefly. Will you eat from a plate that has cheese on it, but it's not on your food? Or does it?
If there's a charcuterie board, will I get something that's also on the charcuterie board?
Hamburgers and cheeseburgers out for a,
Well, you can't have anything that touches cheese.
No. I don't want any of that cheese to get on, but I'll probably scrape that off.
Yeah, but it's not just because it's on the plate doesn't mean you will avoid it.
No, I'm not to that point.
Good.
So, but yeah.
We don't have to worry about that here.
Now I want you to eat cheese on air. We got to make this happen.
I've got a game I've been working on.
I'll bring in our favorite comfort foods with cheese.
Well,
Cheez-Its? Will you eat Cheez-Its?
I don't. Not a fan of those either. Just even
Cheetos?
the nachos, Doritos,
Can't even eat the artificial cheese
flavored
stuff.
Yes, the smell of it just turns me off right away.
I think you need to go to therapy for this. I think it's all mental. I really do. I refuse to believe that an individual would not like any type of cheese.
I don't
other
like
than
milk
being
either.
lactose intolerant, and then I get that. If your body rejects it like it did when you were 5. But you do know now that you're past the allergy.
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
But I will not drink milk. Just the smell, the taste. I'm
gonna work on this with it. Milk, fine, but cheese, we're gonna get you eating cheese.
Made from the same stuff. Okay, guys, but I'll go ahead and.
Do you eat beef?
Beef?
That comes from the same animal.
Yes, but it's
okay.
We can have this conversation off.
You'll eat the flesh of the cow, but not what the cow produces. Got it. All right, continue.
Yep. All right. So our next story comes from North Carolina, but police are looking for 2 men that have been caught stealing $300,000 worth of Magic the Gathering cards. And if you're not familiar with Magic the Gathering, congrats. I am not either, but I will read to you from Wikipedia what this game is. A player in Magic takes the role of a planeswalker, a powerful wizard who can travel between dimensions of the multiverse, doing battle with other players as planeswalkers by casting spells, using artifacts, and summoning creatures as depicted on individual cards drawn from their individual decks. It continues, but you get the gist.
It sounds like Game of Thrones, but with cards.
Yeah, I guess Dungeons and Dragons would be somewhat similar. This isn't really my area of expertise, but
it's the area of expertise of one group and one group only.
But yeah, we got
virgins.
We got pictures of these guys just still in these cards.
LARPers.
I'm just
yes.
$300,000.
The Venn diagram would show that the interest in this game takes place here with the virgin community more than anyone else, and that's what we're really targeting, that crowd.
Yeah.
Bring this up on your next first date, Davey, that you play this game.
Tonight,
it's in 2 hours, so.
Got a date in 2 hours, wow.
It would probably go over worse than that girl who went on the date with a guy that was sports betting.
Well, actually, it's funny you mentioned that because I didn't think about this ahead of time, but before the show, Hut and I were out in the bar area, and I told him, hey, I think I'm going to put a parlay together on some preseason games. And all those games start exactly at the same time my date's supposed to take place. So got a big 5-leg parlay coming up. We'll see how that goes, you know.
When the third-string quarterback throws that pick.
Took a lot of unders. Leave it at that.
Okay, well done.
So the Gen Con Indy 2023 is where this took place at. So we're still looking for these guys, the guys in question. Thomas Dunbar and Andrew Pearson Glom. They are considered persons of interest. So if you know these guys, yeah.
I took a video the other day of a guy and sent it to Hutton that I'm convinced may be a serial killer that was walking down the streets of Nashville. And I just wanted to document it.
He definitely goes by 3 names.
In case, it definitely goes by 3 names. All the makings of a serial killer were there. He was walking around downtown Nashville on a 97-degree day in the craziest, olive-colored outfit while holding a suitcase that looked like it was from 1972. The olive color matched his pants he had on, and he had the Jeffrey Dahmer glasses on that with the straight
like they're filming a
top
scene in a
to
movie.
it. And he's walking through there, and I should send the video, but I'll probably get in trouble for it.
Did he look like someone that would play Magic the Gathering?
Yes. There were one of 2 things in that 1972 suitcase. Magic the Gathering cards or human appendages. One of the 2 definitely were in that. I think I told Hutton, the odds are high that there's a human head inside of this suitcase right now as you walk through the streets of Nashville.
Have you played Magic the Gathering?
No. Never played
Same.
that. Never played Dungeons and Dragons.
What is it, Catan? Settlers of Catan?
Settlers of Catan. That's a fun game. That's quick, easy. It's just a simple board game.
Tell me how that's different, though, than these other games. Kind of seems the same to me.
Well, you only buy the one game. This is there's trading cards, so you have to keep acquiring different items.
There's a world. There's world building that goes on with this. Okay.
Now, I think there are a couple of other games they've added on for Catan, but the main one that a lot of people play, I know it was huge when Tennessee's basketball team, Grant Williams now with the Dallas Mavericks, he's a huge proponent of it, and so I know a lot of people back home, whenever he got into it, really started to learn more about it. But yeah, I would recommend Settlers of Catan. I cannot tell you anything about Magic the Gathering. But $300,000 is a lot. I'm thinking Ocean's 11, but it's a card game for dorks.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's amazing to me how much these cards go for.
Yeah, don't have it in here, but remember us talking about Blake Martinez, the former Giants linebacker, who was selling the Pokemon cards and doing a really good job as far as making money there. Well, now there's people accusing him of scamming and basically taking some cards out of a pack and then reselling, and he's been banned from one site, I believe. So that's a scandal to keep if you stay in the selling of cards arena. I don't even know what
you don't want to be locked out of the Pokemon world. That's one thing that we've always known.
Yeah, you get blacklisted really quickly, and it's all downhill from there.
That is a community that you don't want to be on the outs with, is the Pokemon community.
David,
that I know.
Final headline.
Yes, final story. So we got an 87-year-old grandmother who this is in Maine, but she was in her bed, and she woke up, and there was a guy standing over her with a knife. Obviously very scary. She manages to fight him off. The guy had to be on something. It doesn't say it in the story. But he ultimately ended up getting distracted from her, got hungry, went into the kitchen, and she ended up giving him some peanut butter and crackers and some protein drinks and some tangerines while she called the cops. What I thought was interesting was she called the cops on a rotary phone. This is how old this woman is. Have you all ever used a rotary phone? I've
Yes.
never actually
At my grandmother's
used
My
one.
grandmother had one too.
Okay. So, but she managed to call the cops, take the time, which
Sounds like
would
she
imagine
caught her grandson. Went and made food for him.
But cops were able to arrest the guy. Apparently, he was a juvenile and had a history.
Grandson's on meth again.
Yeah.
Let's get him the tangerine.
Make you a peanut butter sandwich and call the cops.
You just need some hydration, then you'll be okay. Let's get you on your way. What a grandmotherly thing to do, also. Someone
Yeah.
standing over your bed with a knife, and you get scared.
You look
but
like
you
you're
also,
hungry.
You know what? I just think you just need a good, solid, square meal.
you need
and
more
then you're
than
going to
that.
be
You
okay.
need more than
Let's
that
send
one
you on your
sandwich.
way after getting some protein. You're going to be fine. Davey,
Yeah.
thank you.
Props to the grandma, though, taking on the intruder. Back at it. We've got headlines including NFL Plus giving back to the fans. The day is here where you can get RedZone and you don't have to subscribe to anything else. Details next on Hot Mic.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation. And pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the number 1 overall pick.
I just think the way Anthony Bass handled this was so sloppy.
Oh, I think it's perfect.
And
I mean,
what he reposted
did
and then how he did it.
he bent the knee and bowed. He was going to catch the ceremonial first pitch.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
When you're behind closed doors, when you're talking to plant managers, when you're having meetings, when you're with the team, was there an acknowledgement of any of this, an acknowledgement of the situation, the boycott, and then the doubling down about moving away from the fratty image?
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people. I'm pissed off about this. I never did it before in my life, but Trump is being cheated. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, a bold taste of a Southern legend.
Just like that, the final hour is here on this Friday edition of Hot Mic with Udney Withrow across the OutKick Network. Glad you're with us, speeding through your workday, headed into the weekend. You can join us on multiple platforms on social, streaming live on YouTube, and much more. OutKick.com is also a great place to stop. And right here, this is a great radio partner. We say hello to you. Cheers to the weekend. We've got Bernard Pollard coming up in about 20 minutes, former NFL safety. Always opinionated, always brings it. Look forward to catching up with the former vet. Played on some great defenses and played for some great coordinators throughout his career. Not a fan of quarterbacks.
Not a fan of quarterbacks. He was paid to not be a fan of quarterbacks for many years. And quarterbacks, not a fan of him either.
Chad, the football fans will be able to watch every quarterback if they so choose, if they're in the red zone, the game is close, because NFL Plus, you'll need the app for this, but NFL Plus, through their app, is offering a flat $15 rate, no strings attached, for the monthly subscription to NFL RedZone. You don't need a cable subscription like DirecTV. You don't have to have the dish on your roof. You don't have to have YouTube TV as a part of this either. NFL Network and NFL RedZone offered to you through NFL Plus. And this coincides with, by the way, I'm all for this. This coincides with the NFL, through their NFL media, wanting a partner. They want to have an investor come in and be the jet fuel for NFL Plus and their app. So how do you drive up subscriptions? How do you get more downloads? How do you say, hey, we're reaching a different audience that you can now be a part of? It's through their app and NFL Plus, and they now have the rights to do this, unlike what they've had in the past with their other agreements with DirecTV and other outlets that they've had currently. I love it, though. I love RedZone. Even if I'm at a game in a press box, I'll have RedZone on to keep up with what's going on across the league.
Surprised that they haven't already partnered with Amazon and Prime Video on this to be that jet fuel for the NFL Plus app, that it could be a part of the functionality of Prime Video, and you just pay a $15 extra subscription to them, that goes to the NFL to carry it. But I love this. I have not, and when I saw the news, I almost went to my smart TV to look for the NFL Plus app. I assume it's easy to find and just to put right there on your television, on your smart TV, and go in and give them your credit card information and pay the $15 for 4 or 5 months of RedZone. I love it. I'm going to do it. It's easy enough. It's not overly expensive. I think it's a great move for fan appreciation by the NFL. So I don't see much of a downside to this for people that love RedZone, which, quite frankly, is pretty much everyone I know. I don't know many people that have an issue with RedZone, that don't like it. I've loved it for a while. So this is great.
Yeah, and you can get this straight through the app on your phone. You can also, you'll get the condensed games, you get the game replays like you would through the NFL Network, NFL.com play, where you could subscribe and get the playback after the games have aired. You still get all of that with the NFL Plus premium access. I love it. But there's a reason why they're doing it, and they're about to, like, Chad, what was the story we saw where Disney is looking to sell a portion of the percentage ownership to an investor? And NFL was mentioned as part of that.
So Bob Iger said recently, he's talked about ESPN and linear TV, so ESPN, ABC, not being a big part of the future of what they're going to be doing at Disney. It's going to be more parks and streaming is going to be their focus. And yesterday at their earnings meeting stated that it's not to just get liquidity out of it and to make money. They're looking more for a strategic investor that can help grow their streaming properties with ESPN, which immediately the reports of Major League Baseball, NBA made a lot of sense, because they want a league to partner with them where they distribute that league's games on streaming, and it can help grow everything. I think baseball makes the most sense because of the amount of games and inventory. If Major League Baseball invested into ESPN and had that promotional arm of ESPN while also distributing all of their games through ESPN Plus, well, that's a pretty big win for the streaming department at Disney, which is now going to be their focus.
Chad, the play-by-play voice of the Baltimore Orioles in the booth for their television broadcast returns tonight. We mentioned earlier in the week Kevin Brown was expected to return Friday night in Seattle, and in fact he will. He'll be back on the broadcast for the O's, and he's going to read a statement when the broadcast begins, but he's already released one through his social media account. And as we read through this, you were asking the question, Chad, hey, blink if you're okay as you read this into a camera. O's fans, I'm a storyteller. Never want to be a part of the story. The most compelling story in baseball right now is the story of the league-leading Baltimore Orioles, the best, most exciting young team in the American League. Unfortunately, recent media reports have mischaracterized my relationship with my adopted hometown Orioles. The fact that I have a wonderful relationship with the organization and our ownership and front office has fully supported me since 2019 when I first came aboard. I ask that everyone disregard the distracting noise of the past few days. I worked closely with the O's and their senior vice president for the past 4 years. John Angelos and I have solid dialogue based on mutual respect. We're all good here in Birdland. I am proud to be an Oriole and call Baltimore home. There's no place in baseball I'd rather be now, and for the long haul, go O's.
Nowhere in that, whatever that was, that hostage tape that was put on X from Kevin Brown, did we see any clarification on whether or not he was suspended? Because he was. He was taken off air for the reasons the media reported. Now, you can say the media reports or mischaracterization of my relationship with them, whatever. Maybe, some columns, opinions about it were overblown and different things to be different with that. But he did not refute the fact that he was pulled off air for saying something, and he even talked about an ongoing dialogue with John Angelos, the owner of the Orioles. So,
yeah, so they're not going
this
to
changes
mention
nothing other than Kevin Brown liking his job and
part
his
of
boss saying, hey, put something out that everything's cool.
So I'm curious how they go about this now, because part of the big part of the story is how bad, and I would know as an Orioles fan, how bad they have absolutely sucked to what they're doing now. They've traded away great talent like Manny Machado and others. In return, they're getting prospects that are now flourishing in their system on the major league level to have them where they are. They've used their draft picks well with Rushman and others that are a part of this group, and they're crushing it. So how do you tell that story and not piss off John Angelos and ownership because it was, it makes them look cheap? How do you give that storyline? And you better believe whenever they hit the playoffs, Chad, and they start on the national broadcasts, every broadcaster is going to be pointing out the streaks that they went through losing and what they're doing now against great competition.
Yeah, well, John Angelos can't control those national broadcasts, so he can control, and he can be thin-skinned and petty with his own guy and take offense to anything that they want to put out there.
It's also what O's fans know.
He also didn't even say anything about all the guys they traded away.
No,
they just had a graphic of their record against the Rays in recent years.
Yeah.
No mention of, and because ownership was selling low with these guys and they couldn't pay them and would not pay them, this is why they continue to lose. He just put up a graphic stating how great they've been this year and better against the Rays as opposed to previous years.
Well, he didn't put the graphic up. He just read from it.
Yeah. Well, the production crew. I'm saying they were reading from, this was a pre-planned.
Did they suspend the production crew?
Scripted.
That's another story.
I guess not. And if so, they're not talking about it.
It's bizarre. And if there's more to it, then, he's not saying it there, but it doesn't feel like there is based on awful announcing and front office sports and everyone else that's pointed to this.
This statement is confirmation there's not more to it.
Yeah.
Because all he would have to say was, my wife was sick, I was in the hospital, this was always planned, I go to radio, I have it in my contract, I do 5 radio games a year, this was the time I was going to do it. There's no truth to anything about a suspension. He could have said all of that. He said none of that.
And he tried, the O's tried to keep it quiet because this happened at the end of July, and the story didn't pop until earlier this week in August, as he was already off the broadcast for a few games here.
Again, this changes nothing other than Kevin Brown. It tells me Kevin Brown likes his job and is doing what ownership told him to do, to say everything's fine.
Well, it reminds me of based on the level of competition that you're calling as a play-by-play announcer or an analyst, if you're calling a high school football game, you're not going to crush the officials.
You don't go overly critical.
Right. As much, or a play call or whatever it might be. You can certainly question it, but you don't crush people over it. When you get to the major league level, it's totally different. And so are the broadcasts from Kevin Brown now just going to be like at the Little League World Series level where everything's glorious and, little Timmy tried hard on that strikeout. You never saw that curveball coming. But, man, he's certainly aware of the next time he comes to bat. Don't you worry, O's fans.
I mean,
what the hell?
I marvel at the lack of toughness of people in positions of power that we see so often. The owners of teams and sometimes people who run leagues, that the American assumption would be these people have worked so hard and their hands are so calloused and their mind is so callous from that work, and they deflect all criticism and they live to conquer you and to conquer their own whatever insecurities are. And that's what they do. And that's how you reach this point of being this successful. And how that's juxtaposed with someone like John Angelos, who suspended his play-by-play guy because he dared to mention a record against the Tampa Bay Rays in previous seasons.
Chad,
and how weak-minded that is, that absolutely blows my mind.
We need to send a box of shirts to Baltimore. DBAP.
We need. I think DBAP should be the mantra of the O's moving forward. And hey, they have DBAP'd all season. That's why they've been one of the greatest stories out there.
Just walking on eggshells now. You're now having to think about how to word a success story. Not a failure. They're now having to come up with different ways to phrase the success of the Baltimore Orioles now.
Well, he starts it by saying that. I'm a storyteller. I don't want to be a part of the story. The story is the Baltimore Orioles. It's what we said on the show.
Yeah.
Because they have been the story, and now with a self-inflicted wound, you've made it not so much a story. So that's not good. By the way, congratulations to Media Pennsylvania going to the Little League World Series. My cousin's Washington, D.C. team loses on a 2-run walk-off home run in the bottom of extra innings, 2-0 in a scoreless game before that.
That sucks.
Pretty heartbreaking for the kids on the other side of that one. But a lot of joy and jubilation from
pitch count played
Pennsylvania.
a part of it, right?
85 pitch count limit, but I mean they were on to the second pitcher after that by the time this happened. So good pitching all the way around. Proud of my cousin, though, who was a big part of that team. Fun
back to
run.
back.
And that was the furthest DC's ever advanced. First time they've ever made a regional final was in this game today. So congratulations to them.
Chad, you mentioned the having to walk on eggshells and being a part of the story, and that's not what the O's announcer wanted here with Kevin Brown. Mickelson's a part of the story of gambling yet again, and we've heard so many different stories and rumors and what he's admitted as well. And he's still a huge fan of betting while playing on the golf course, friendly wagers as he would call it. But he's denying what we heard from Billy Walters through an excerpt of his book that's coming out. One of the world-renowned gamblers, period, is saying that Phil would call him up trying to place big money bets on, for instance, the Ryder Cup. And Phil released this statement on social. I never bet on the Ryder Cup. While it's well known that I always enjoy a friendly wager on the course, I would never undermine the integrity of the game. I've also been very open about my gambling addiction. I previously conveyed my remorse, took responsibility, I've gotten help, and have been fully committed to therapy that has positively impacted me, and I feel good about where I am now. Now, I mentioned earlier that the one aspect that he's not denying is that while he's saying he never bet on the Ryder Cup, Billy Walters said that Phil called him up in 2012 for the Ryder Cup that Phil was participating in, trying to make a $400,000 wager on the U.S. And trying to make a wager is different than betting on the Ryder Cup, because Billy Walters says that he told Phil, absolutely not. I'm not going to be in the middle of this as you become the next Pete Rose instead of living up to where you are status-wise currently, which is the current Arnold Palmer of the game. And he said he expected that Phil hung up the phone and called someone else to make that wager. So while he may not have bet on the Ryder Cup, I mean, he didn't say that.
He tried to.
I didn't call Billy Walters and he's a liar. trying to make a $400,000 wager.
Billy Walters not being a good friend right now to Phil Mickelson with this tell-all book and airing all of his dirty laundry, most of which Phil Mickelson's already told anyways. But he was being a good friend back in 2012 when he said, you don't want to do this, when he was trying to place a $400,000 bet on his own Ryder Cup team. So that was an instance where he was being a good friend to Phil Mickelson and saying, yeah, this would be a mistake to be a part of this. So I'm with you. That's the interesting omission from that.
Yeah.
Is that he didn't say, I didn't try to bet on it, just that he didn't.
And we view it different now, right? Like, it's just viewed differently of what Phil either tried to do or did. Like, it's a story because of the outrageous numbers, I think. Losing $100 million, betting, wagering over $1 billion, according to what Walters is saying. Colin Morikawa is pledging $1,000 per birdie in Maui recovery. This is awesome. He pledged $1,000 per birdie that he makes in the FedEx Cup playoffs to aid recovery on Maui, where wildfires, I mean, the story there is
awful.
Terrible. Yeah, recovery missions are continuing. So my guess is that other players will jump on board with this too. That would be a great effort. And props to Colin Morikawa.
Yeah, props to him. And tying this into the last story, I bet on Colin Morikawa this weekend before the tournament even started. And last check, at least after the first round, he was 2 strokes off the lead.
Coming up,
good for me.
Bernard Pollard joins us. We talk all things NFL and the landscape of where players are versus the money that's being raked in from the league. That's next on Hot Mic.
Two biggest social media giants, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, are set to battle it out, and I'm here on Broadway asking people who they put their money on. Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk, they're going to fight each other. Who do you think's going to win?
I think Mark's got him.
Really?
Yeah.
Why do you think that?
Because he's a man.
Okay, and Elon Musk isn't?
Oh, well, of course, he's got money.
Okay.
He's got money. Money, well, you know, money's money.
Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg in a fight?
I don't know. I'm going to go with Musk.
Why?
It just seems like he's a little bit younger, a little bit smarter.
You just got a good feeling about him?
Yeah, I got a good feeling.
Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg?
Musk.
Why?
He trains. That guy's going to beat his
But Mark Zuckerberg is actually training jiu-jitsu for 9 months.
Not happening. Elon Musk all day. Elon Musk.
Why do you think?
He has no soul. I mean, I think he's definitely just going to no holds barred.
Elon Musk.
Why do you think that?
I don't know. I feel like he's stronger and smarter.
Oh, Elon Musk.
All the way? Why?
All the way. He's an animal. Think about it.
Mark Zuckerberg's been training for 9 months jiu-jitsu. You think Elon Musk can take him?
Yeah, I think he can take him.
Elon, that oh God, stop playing with Elon. Elon really do this out here, for real.
I hope Elon
Really? Why do you think so?
got better ideas.
Zuckerberg's like 5'7", 155. Musk is 6'1", 190. But Zuckerberg's been training jiu-jitsu for 9 months. Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, who's going to win in a fight?
Oh, Elon Musk. No doubt.
Why do you think so?
He's the GOAT. I've been seeing all the Twitter handles and all the talk, and I'm on Elon Musk's side. I'm ready for them to get in the WWE ring and then come off the top rope. That's what I want to see. I want to see a people's elbow to Mark Zuckerberg.
If one was more likely to be a lizard or a robot, who would it be?
Elon.
Okay.
I think Mark Zuckerberg will win.
Why do you think that?
Because I think he already trains MMA. So he's got like the prior experience and stuff. I mean, they're both billionaires, so they have the opportunity to get the best training. But I think Mark Zuckerberg will pull away with the win.
Elon Musk.
Why do you think so?
Because he's bigger.
Bigger. Okay, but Mark Zuckerberg's been training jiu-jitsu for 9 months. Do you think that matters?
No.
Zuckerberg, he's part alien or robot, so he may have some secret powers that we don't know about.
I was going to say, is that an advantage? Does he have an advantage over Elon Musk then?
Yeah, I mean, if he, sheds his skin and becomes an alien and eats everyone, yeah, I think so.
Elon Musk is mental, so Elon Musk.
All it is just he's mental. He's mentally crazy, so.
He just wouldn't care, would he?
Okay.
He'd just absolutely go for it. I think Zuckerberg would be a bit more refrained.
Okay.
If that should ever happen, which I doubt, but you never know, it'd be entertaining.
Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg?
Elon Musk.
Why?
Because my dad is in love with Elon Musk.
Okay.
I think I'm going to have to go with Zuckerberg. I mean, Threads just came out, so.
Who do you think would win?
Zuck.
Why do you think so?
He's not a real human. He's a robot.
So he'll use that to his advantage.
Yeah, and all the Krav Maga stuff too. Yeah.
Who do you think would win in a fight, Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk?
Elon Musk.
Why do you think Elon Musk?
I think Elon's
He
smarter.
works with robots, so maybe he built a robot to fight for him.
But what if Mark Zuckerberg is a robot?
Oh, wow.
Then I might have to change my answer.
Who do you think is going to win?
Me.
Glad you're with us. 6th and Peabody, our location, with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow across the OutKick network. Chad, Bernard Pollard, one of my favorite players to go chat with or interview in the locker room. We were just talking about the Orioles and how the ownership can't take criticism from, it wasn't even criticism, just facts.
Anything. Can't take anything.
From the broadcaster. Meanwhile, Pollard's at his locker, like 2013, I believe, somewhere around there, saying, yeah, we're piss poor terrible, and just taking ownership of it. And by the way, they were. The Titans were awful.
Gotta love that honesty, Hutton.
Yeah, and I honestly here, I haven't been in touch with Bernard and BP in a while, and I had the number, and I wasn't sure who I was texting. Turns out, good news, Bernard Pollard is on the other end of the phone. Great to see you, man. Hope things are well.
All is well, man. How you doing, brother?
Fantastic. How much preseason are you watching? I know you, for whatever reason, are watching that Texans game last night.
For whatever reason, dude. No, I'm actually I'm trying to get back into the games, and it's been a lot of fun just to be able to just get back in touch with ball. The rule changes and things like that, man. That's just frustrating for me, but at the same time, 4 kids and all 4 of them either playing club sports, travel, all this other thing, all the things, man. So we're Uber drivers that don't get paid, and I'm trying to eat my way back into football.
I totally know the feeling. That's a full plate for you for sure. I wanted to ask you this because you were a guy who would get after the quarterback and get after the offense at all costs. And I'm watching the quarterback series with Patrick Mahomes, and he says something in there, and they go through this whole montage about how his philosophy with defenders is that he's overly nice to them, that he always compliments them, he helps them up at times, he's patting them on the helmet, he's saying, good rush, way to do this, and he thinks psychologically that they let up on him and don't finish certain plays, where otherwise, if he was being a punk the whole game, they would drive him into the ground, risking his availability for the team. Do you buy that? That if you're really nice to the defense, that maybe they won't drive you into the ground or take that little extra shot on the sideline?
Now, I'll tell you this. I don't buy it right now, simply because today's rules keep you from freaking scratching the quarterback. So I don't buy what he's saying, but I will say, Andrew Luck did that a lot. He was just a nice dude, and I mean, you would hit him hard, and he'd be like, "Man, that was a great hit, bro. Congratulations, bro. Like what have you been doing?" I remember I hit him one time. He was like, "Bro, you must power clean a lot." I'm like, "Bro, what?" Like, so it's just like, it's one of those things where you just kind of lose yourself, and like you got to get back to, wait a minute, I'm in a game, I got to get after this dude. But in today's football, man, it's just everything's changed so much, and you guys have seen it over the years. As you go in to get these guys, defenders are letting up, because they don't want to come down on them. They don't want to do too much. But, those quarterback hits, those quarterback hurries, those things matter. And in today's football, they still matter. But at the same time, everybody's cautious of getting a penalty to extend a drive or to potentially, be, detrimental to your team, which, a penalty can. And it's just, I can't stand it at all.
Bernard Pollard, our guest, NFL safety, Super Bowl champ, and 4 franchises, Chiefs, Texans, Ravens, and Titans. He's joining us here on Hot Mic with Hutton and Withrow. Would you rather face the quarterbacks of today's era or your era? And I'm not trying to date you here. It hasn't been that long. But you face some Hall of Famers.
How was it playing
some
Joe Namath? No,
very solid, very solid QBs that aren't Hall of Fame worthy, but are in the second tier. How would you compare today's quarterbacks and the young guys right now, just in particular the AFC?
I would love to play against these guys. You know, I think my era quarterbacks were football was just better, right? Like I think what makes it so hard for a lot of former players and even fans to watch the game of football right now is because you know I think it makes it hard because can you respect the stats, right? Because of the rule changes. Do I respect it? I mean, because at the end of the day, when a game is started, it's literally we're going to go out here offensively and we're going to play catch. And when I, you know, what do I mean when I say that? Like you can't do certain things anymore. You know, you can't touch guys going across the line. You can't check them coming across the middle. You can't, you know, if you hit them too hard or, you know, whatever. It's just those things they've taken the intensity. They've taken that leverage from the defense. And that's one thing that we had as defensive players was leverage was we control this middle. And now all of a sudden that middle is wide open. So today's quarterbacks, they're good. Like, I mean, they're able to put balls in certain places and they can get certain coverages because they know good and well, you got to have 4 and 5 DBs sometimes on the football field to run with, you know, the speed and the matchup body wise offensively. So, you know, the ball placement and everything else, it's there. But I think the guys, the Peyton Mannings, obviously Tom just retired, Phillip Rivers, you know, Roethlisberger, those dudes were some dudes. They were dudes. And, you know, these cats that's coming in, I think it's really 5, maybe 6 guys that I can look at and be like, yo, them cats can go, and I would love to have played against them. So yeah, I respect, you know, today's quarterbacks, and I respect, you know, the quarterbacks when I played. But I think I would rather play those guys because you can actually hit them. What I did get fined for my pinky touching Brett Favre's face mask, and I was pissed off about that one. But whatever.
What was the fine?
It was actually $15,000. It might have been $20,000. I blitzed and I came in and I went to go swing the swat after the ball on his follow through, and my pinky touched his face mask, and I had a FedEx at my locker the next day. And I didn't even know how. I'm like, dude, FedEx can run that fast? Like, how did they get that to me that quick? So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, if you would have hit the ball, you've been drug tested the next day. Instead, you got a FedEx for a fine.
well, I got drug tested every week anyways because I hit so hard. So that's neither here nor there.
Former NFL safety and Super Bowl champ Bernard Pollard, our guest on Hot Mic. Speaking of intensity, Eric Bieniemy, an intense coach. Were you surprised when Ron Rivera came out at a press conference and said, yeah, he's so intense that players are coming up to me and complaining about his intensity, seemingly kind of rolling his guy he just hired as offensive coordinator under the bus publicly to media members?
You know what? I'm not surprised at that at all. I think this is a situation where Coach Ron Rivera didn't have any say-so in hiring him. I think the execs brought him in. The execs had to make a change. And you know, Coach Bieniemy, he does not leave Kansas City if he doesn't go to Washington with and gain all the power as far as offensively. And so this is a move off of frustration, I believe, from Coach Rivera, because you just don't say that. Like you just, as a coach, you don't say my guys are coming to me and they're complaining about whatever. Because yeah, we can kind of flip it, we can be whatever, but at the same time, you're like, wait a minute. Like, are you saying, like, because at the end of the day, like, you go behind, you know, Coach Bieniemy's back and you air something out publicly, and then now he's got to come and play cleanup about what he's been saying or what he's been doing. And I just don't like how that happened. But at the end of the day, it's a business, and the execs brought him in because they needed change. You know, Coach Rivera is a defensive-minded coach. You know, they had to bring somebody in there that's going to light a fire up under these players because they have too much talent. I think we all can agree when you look at offensively at the Washington Commanders, they have offensive wise, as far as the receiver position, you got 2 dogs at receiver. You got a young quarterback that I think Coach Bieniemy can get going, and if he doesn't, you know, you got a backup and Brissett that can come in and step into play. You got running backs and you got offensive line. You got tight ends that can go. So they've got to get this offense going. Let Coach Ron Rivera concentrate on that defense, be an overseer as far as for the team. But at the same time, we had to give Coach Bieniemy power in order to get him here because it's essentially a lateral move. move for Coach Bieniemy if he goes to Washington from Kansas City. And I don't think, if it's a lateral move, he makes that move.
Bernard, you know as well as I do, though. Like, you came into the league, there were 2-a-days. It was tough.
Yeah.
In today's league, whenever you retired, like you retired from an era where coaches could barely do anything. I don't know how coaches are tough in the NFL nowadays compared to what it could be. And I'm thinking about these complaints, and I'm going, what are they really complaining about? If they're complaining, go to the NFLPA and file something with the league, because otherwise it sounds like they're within the rules and the boundaries.
I agree 100%. What are you complaining about? But at the end of the day, this is something that, this is a culture shock. For these guys, they've been allowed to do certain things. You had an offensive coordinator in there that wasn't capable of getting anything done. You had Coach Ron Rivera, who, he was going through certain things. So I don't know how present he was. And I'm not trying to throw him under the bus, but I'm just being honest.
Plus ownership.
Exactly. Plus ownership. That was some crap right there. So, you had guys coming and going as they please. And when you have a guy that comes in, and I'm not saying, because I've talked to players, I've talked to people in the organization with the Chiefs that, Coach Bieniemy, he probably can. He's got into some disagreements and almost, some fights with players. And it's just one of those things. He is just a hard-nosed guy. He's a guy who demands, greatness from you, right? Like, he's played the game, he understands the game, and he's been sitting under Coach Reed for a long time. And so, a lot of people, I just had a coach tell me he was afraid of me because of the way I played. I'm looking like, what? Okay, wait, why? Like, but this is just what happens, but I think when it's all said and done, these guys have got to toughen up. You are making a lot of money. It's a privilege to play this game. It's a privilege. You should go out there and put it on the line for the city, for the fans, more importantly for yourself. And I mean, if you're whining about and crying about and call yourself tattling on a coach to another coach because he was hard on you and wanted greatness from you, you should be ashamed of yourself. Give your check back and leave.
Bernard, hazing has been in the news lately because of Pat Fitzgerald and the Northwestern situation.
Yeah.
Was your reaction to that story, oh, wow, look at what was going on at Northwestern? Or was it, oh, wow, they just fired the football coach for what was going on at Northwestern?
You know what? They fired the football coach for what was going on at Northwestern. And I mean, at the end of the day, as a head coach of a organization or of a university, you are, even high school, as the head coach, you are essentially to blame for that. You know what I mean? Like, I just, and I don't mean to go off on a tangent, but I just listened to a high school coach yell at his players and ask them, what's our identity? And I'm looking like, wait a minute, what's your identity? These are 14 and 17-year-old boys. You have to set the identity. For him, as the head coach of Northwestern, he was to set the tone and what was going to be allowed and what wasn't going to be allowed. They knew that mess. I am not a believer in hazing at all. I have never hazed anybody. I don't believe it. I was not playing the game when I went to college and and even in high school and coming into the league as a rookie. If you put your hands on me, I'm gonna beat the piss out of you. You can be a grown man. You can say whatever you want to say. You can do whatever you want to do. We didn't play those games. And this mess is getting out. This hazing bullcrap is getting out of hand because people are dying. People have been sexually assaulted, being hazed. This is not funny. And I mean, we can do some things like the haircuts and other stuff like that. Like, if you want to do that, by all means, do that. I think most people will say, that's cool. That comes with it. You got to pay your dues. Carrying pads, you got to pay your dues. Taking a team out, the position group out to dinner, or, I mean, in the pros, you can't do it. You can do it in college now.
NIL's in there now. They can afford dinner.
You're right about that one. So, but doing certain things, but when you start to cross the line, and obviously in this situation, he was fired. So somebody or somebodies, a lot of people crossed the line, and it's just he had to be the example. We had to get rid of him. Not we, but they had to get rid of him.
Bernard Pollard with us. Bernard, just 1 minute left here.
Yes, sir.
But just staying in college, you once famously told Joe Tiller at Purdue, hey, give me my papers for the transfer portal. Where would you have gone if you were in college now and you could enter the portal immediately and go anywhere?
I probably would have transferred to Michigan. I probably would have transferred to Michigan. They wanted to move me to linebacker. It'd have been Michigan or Penn State. They wanted to move me to linebacker, but I don't know if I was serious. I was just hot. It was a steak and beans scrimmage, and I ain't feel like eating beans that night. You know what I mean? Like, we had won, and Coach Tiller, being an offensive-minded coach, he wanted to give his offense another chance to get a first down. And I'm looking like, bro, I slapped the running back. He didn't even cross the line of scrimmage. But nevertheless, it's funny you bring it up because they were just talking about it this past weekend in Detroit. So yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, Tiller didn't grant the request, apparently. The rest is history. The rest is history. Next year, he's rookie with Kansas City. Bernard Pollard has been our guest. Crushboy31 is where you can follow him on social and all of the great tweets as well. Bernard, thank you for the catch-up, man. Always great, and hopefully we can do this again sooner rather than later.
Oh, man, thank you guys for having me, man. Just hit me up. I'm on.
All right, good.
Thanks, Bernard.
The number works.
All right, thank you.
The number works. Bernard Pollard there. Great backdrop and everything.
Beautiful backdrop. One of the things we always notice in this profession, your audio and your backdrop.
Perfect.
Audio was perfect. Backdrop was perfect. I had no idea what direction he was going to go with the hazing stuff because Bernard, known as a tough guy for sure during his playing days.
Well, that's my biggest surprise is there's no Northwestern players that stood up to it and said, hey, no, I'm not doing that. We're going to fight.
But it's amazing the swing of, man, that was disgusting what they were doing. To other people we'd asked, or John McClain's telling stories that were horrific for the NFL back in the 70s compared to the Northwestern stuff and act like, oh, this has been going on forever. So a lot of different opinions out there about it, which makes for a good discussion.
Yeah.
Because the opinions are so different on that Pat Fitzgerald story.
In that era that McClain's talking about, though, if you didn't want to do it, we'll find a circle and you can battle it out in the middle of the locker room.
Yeah.
That never happened at Northwestern, which is, again, just bizarre. Further headlines to come, plus we discuss more college football.
What you're experiencing is the bold taste of a Southern legend. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, authentic Tennessee mountain-style spirits. We believe in crafting flavors that were born from tradition but defy expectation, and pioneering a new experience with every sip. Because if it doesn't do this, it ain't this. Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey. Come on.
Welcome into OutKick the show. I am Clay Travis, your fearless leader. I am going to continue to argue that sports is one of the great unifying forces in all of American life. ESPN is a sinking ship. Democrats are now the party of the white, woke college graduate.
We live in a land of participation trophies.
You gotta lean into the turns. You really gotta lean into the turns.
When Leah Thomas walked in that first day, it got silent, and every girl was uncomfortable.
Very difficult to go back-to-back years in the NFL with the #1 overall pick.
I just think the way Anthony Bass handled this was so sloppy.
Oh, I think it's perfect.
And what he reposted,
he
and then how he did it.
He bent the knee and bowed. He was going to catch the ceremonial first pitch.
I've been out of LA long enough to have forgotten that libs, no matter how ridiculous the scenario, are gonna live. Another week of inflation, another week with Biden with COVID, and another set of losers to crown. People don't watch the WNBA on TV, in person, on a plane, on a train, on a bus, or on purpose.
The scary thing, Tommy, is in the history of this government, I've never seen them give anything back that they've taken.
Oh no, they never do.
And they won't.
When you're behind closed doors, when you're talking to plant managers, when you're having meetings, when you're with the team, was there an acknowledgement of any of this, an acknowledgement of the situation, the boycott, and then the doubling down about moving away from the fratty image?
We've seen coaches throw water bottles. We've seen coaches act like idiots. We've seen coaches slap other coaches. But I think if you're involved in carjacking, you're inherently a rotten human being. The level of stupid that sometimes gets on our YouTube chat just gives me a headache. You're born a male, play with males. You're born a female, play with females. Don't at me about it, people. I'm pissed off about this. I never did it before in my life, but Trump is being cheated. The American people are being cheated. We, ladies and gentlemen, are being cheated.
I believe this person is the greatest player anybody alive will ever see. How can you hate Derek Jeter? A guy's on-base percentage tells me his batting eye, and a guy's slugging percentage tells me if he's a threat. That's the kind of guy that throws a no-hitter, that effectively wild guy.
Old Smoky Moonshine and Whiskey, a bold taste of a Southern legend.
Hope everyone is looking forward to a great weekend. Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow rolls on. 6th and Peabody, our location with EHA Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Chad, one of the top conversations we had this week was with Ryan Leaf, who gave great perspective on his reaction to Untold Johnny Football, the docuseries on Netflix, and how there's much more meat on the bone than what was put out there and how they wrap things up without really saying very much about how Johnny's doing or if he's trying to change his ways, and further detail on where his mind is now, the mental health aspect of admitting that he plotted ways to commit suicide and give himself reasons as to why he should do it. And I think the more and more I read the stories that have been picked up by other outlets and quoting Ryan Leaf in that, I think it gives perspective in a vast majority of the readers and viewers and those just reacting like we have. In real time, I've viewed the show one way, and now I'm thinking through the lens of what Leaf is saying. It could easily be, it goes without saying, that could easily be a 2, 3, 4 episode series instead of just one episode that had to be crunched together and tied up in a bow last minute, with the biggest headline being promoted really at the back end of the piece.
Well, when I saw the length of it, when I started the documentary, I thought, man, this is short. And it flew by because there's so much information, so many things happening so quick that it probably did lend itself more to a docuseries. But hearing from Ryan Leaf did change my mind a bit on the way, not the way necessarily I felt about it. I was entertained by it, but it made me think about it with different layers.
Here's Ryan Leaf, a portion of this, which you can find and go back on the YouTube channel. Just search out OutKick. Ryan Leaf from earlier in the week with us.
I put this on Netflix. You have done everybody such a disservice. Once again, people have taken advantage of Johnny Manziel. There was no solutions. There was no addressing the bipolar diagnosis and how he's dealing with it and how he's living with it around his substance abuse. And then at the very end, he talks about back in the day being in a frat. The football team is a frat. And then they show him, and he's sitting at a table with all his new frat buddies pounding beers. If they were trying to achieve like a montage of this great, unbelievable college football star, by all means, let's do it. But that's not what Untold has been doing. I don't quite understand it. I put the blame at Netflix. I lay it at their feet. I feel like they took advantage of somebody that I don't know what they needed to maybe lift him up again. His dad and his sister talking about, why isn't he doing anything? Well, he's not in a place where he can.
That Ryan Leaf interview you can find on our YouTube channel. Just search out OutKick. We hope to subscribe while you're there and share it on social. This is coming from a player in Ryan Leaf who also attempted suicide in 2012 and reached a very dark place with his addictions and disease, as he referred to in the entire interview. And I'm looking through it through a different lens from that angle. Hopefully there are people around Johnny Manziel that help him be more of Johnny Manziel than Johnny Football, if that, in fact, is the mindset that he has. I just like the fact, Chad, the biggest thing I took away is he sat down. They didn't know he was going to say anything like that whenever Netflix showed up. and he brought this up on his own. I like the fact that he's now vocalizing some of the trials that he's gone through, and I would suspect continues to go through.
Yeah, and we had the director on, and I asked him, how is Johnny doing now? And he talked around it a bit and said, well, I think he's 31. He said, so, I mean, the story's not done. You know, it's kind of an incomplete.
Yeah.
You know, he thinks he's a little bit better, but, you know, clearly it's not like he's not drinking, you know, or partying based on what he was allowed on video during there when he was in Scottsdale. So he's talking to his dad, but his dad didn't seem overly thrilled about where he is in life. It's more of just, I get to hang out with my son again now. So, look, there's a lot of questions that come from the documentary. It answered some questions, but not a ton. I just found it to be very fast-paced and entertaining.
It is
telling
entertaining.
the phenom that was Johnny Football. All the other stuff that you heard Ryan Leaf get into, the serious part of this, about his life, his recovery, everything else, I think are all valid points and could make for further discussion and a bigger exploration of Johnny Manziel. Not Johnny Football, but Johnny Manziel in the future. This was much more surface level. I enjoyed it, but great stuff from Ryan Leaf giving us a very different perspective based on his experience.
We highly recommend going and watching this Untold Johnny Football on Netflix. The Untold series has been great, and we've got Swamp Kings coming up, among other things. So
the first one was Malice in the Palace, I think, right? It wasn't that part of the Untold
that
series?
That does sound right, yeah.
That's still my favorite one that I've seen. I love that one.
Many other options for the Untold series as well, and Davey Hudson has more on a topic we can discuss going into the weekend here.
Yeah, guys, so as we know, the conversation around the Johnny Manziel football doc has been something we've been talking about since we knew, hey, Ryan Duffy's coming on. And it got us having to ask the question, like, well, what's something that we have not seen that we would love to be made into a documentary? So for this next topic, we're going to go around the room and give our thought of, you can give your title, but what is a college sports doc that we're waiting to see?
I love this.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I'll start. And I'm in the franchise-making business, right? That's what everyone in entertainment's trying to do right now. So it's not good enough just to have the one idea. You got to have one idea that they could then spin off and be a series or be more than that. The Untold series is a great concept, right? It's Untold, what's next,
Blank.
right? Yeah, blank, and then you could fill in the blank on what you want to see. Similar to a 30 for 30 series with ESPN. There's only been 2 16 seeds to ever pull off the David versus Goliath upset and beat a number 1 seed. I think it's like 2-90 or something like that is the overall record of 16 seeds in the NCAA tournament. I would like to see a docuseries or just one documentary that could be a 2-hour movie titled 16. And all we do is look at Fairleigh Dickinson in 2023 over Purdue, and then UMBC in 2018 knocking off Virginia. One was a 20-point win. UMBC won by 20. They blew them out in that game. The other one was a closer game with Fairleigh Dickinson. But Ryan Odom is a great personality. Guys on those teams seem like great personalities. Tobin Anderson, the coach of FDU, was terrific during their run.
Yes.
But going back and talking to the principal characters, the coaches, administration, get a student on camera, that was there, talk to the players, and go back and show footage of not just the game, but the entire season or the buildup of the star player who emerged in that game, where they're from in high school, how they got to that school, what it was like when they started, what led them to that moment, and do split shots of each team going back and forth and going to their campuses and showing it. I would love that. And if it does well for a franchise, my next season is titled 15, and I'm going to take a look at all 11 15 seeds to beat number 2 seeds in the NCAA tournament. Maybe I'd be the only one watching it, maybe not, but I would be interested in seeing this.
Yeah, and I think also...
Because I love Cinderella stories.
When you can set up the cameras now in advance because of how the transfer portal is helping a lot of this. And the COVID year also made teams more, veteran savvy, roster-wise too. But, you could almost wait for the next upset and not wish upon a star anymore.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Yeah. And I'm fascinated by, what happens when the broadcast ends and the media clears out of the locker room and they go back to campus.
Oh, the follow-up to all of it. would be great. I also think it's something that the problem is if you wait, you're going to have 4 or 5, like you said.
Yeah.
But it's something that would be even cooler like 10 years in the future. You know, to look at, like, see guys where they are now in their early 30s and going back as a retrospective to what happened.
I also would just like the idea of, you saw UMBC knock off Virginia that entire year leading up to them winning the national championship. You go from the first team to ever lose to that 16 seed, and you flip the script. I think that angle would also be fun there.
Guys, my Untold series, whether or not he wants to admit it or not, because he once told Clay Travis, this was 6 or 7 years ago now, that this whole thing was inaccurate and not true. But Lane Kiffin's alias of Joey Freshwater, Untold Joey Freshwater in Alabama, in T-Town, and knowing that, for those unfamiliar, and by now everyone's familiar, but it was more or less a fake Tinder account for Lane Kiffin on campus where he would go into bars and watering holes and he would introduce himself as Joey Freshwater instead of Lane Kiffin. At least that's the rumored aspect. Now, Kiffin denies all of this, like it never happened, right? But there are so many, many with stories about Joey Freshwater in Tuscaloosa. Take a camera crew down memory lane or in this corridor or a hallway at Innisfree, and let's have an Untold Joey Freshwater tour of what that was like from all of the stories or rumors that Kiffin was allegedly involved in here. I love there were co-eds on campus, Alabama jerseys with Freshwater on the back of them,
which is hilarious.
Let's open this door and have the Untold Joey Freshwater episode, because that to me is
this would need to be like an
legendary.
HBO Max original,
legendary,
right?
Yeah,
they did the Alabama sorority deal on HBO Max, the documentary. So this would be a nice follow-up to that. That would involve Alabama sororities.
I mean, this follows him everywhere. I mean, we went on the OutKick the Tailgate tour, and we stopped in Tuscaloosa, and we had name tags that said Joey Freshwater while we were, throwing back Yellowhammers.
Searching for Bobby Fischer, and now they're searching for Joey Freshwater.
Chad, how eager would you be to watch this?
I would kill to watch it.
This to me is just pure entertainment and joy over even if it's just rumor and innuendo.
Oh,
but there's so many people with a story.
It'd be great. Lane Kiffin would hate it, but the rest of us would love it.
I think Kiffin kind of loves it. I think he kind of loves it.
Maybe. Davey?
He at least has a good sense of humor about it.
What you got?
I would like to add that we hired Daniel Tosh to play Kiffin in the reenactment scenes.
I'd love like an Unsolved Mysteries, cheesy reenactments in it. Like just a purposefully cheesy, dramatic reenactments.
I would use Kiffin as an extra, just in disguise in the bar when we're shooting this.
Who was Ron Mexico? Was that
was Cam Newton, right?
Is it Cam Newton or Mike Vick?
Mike Vick. It was Mike Vick.
Mike Vick had the alias of Ron Mexico. Yeah.
You're right.
Okay.
Speaking of T-Town, though, it was T-Town menswear, right? Yeah.
Guys, for my documentary, this is one that we're still kind of in the making of it. But, I mean, right now, the entire talk is around conference realignment. And my idea was for the Manifest Destiny, the collapse of the Power Five. And if you don't remember Manifest Destiny, the belief in the 19th century of, all right, we're going to take our settlers and we're going west. We're going to take over the entire continent.
Go west, young man.
Yes. We have seen these conferences just start taking over schools, and geographic areas do not matter. I mean, really, whenever I'm watching this, you can see those maps of how they change it over time of which conference each team's in. It reminds me of the game of Risk. And so I would just love to go behind the scenes and get these ideas of how this fell apart. Like Larry Scott screwing up the Pac-12. I mean, and it starts from way back. You could probably even go to the 80s and 90s as we have this realignment take place, and just where it's going as we ultimately get to this conference of, like you were talking about earlier, Chad, 32 teams, modeling it after the NFL. It's eventually where it's going, and just chronicling the journey along the way. That's something I would think would kill for a documentary.
There would be extensive source material on this. I mean, this is like a 20-part docuseries. If you want to go into the start of it, the building of the conferences, the building of the idea of the Power Five, and then eventually the crumbling of it. I mean, I love the idea.
Yeah.
Specifically, I could watch 2 hours just on the death of the Pac-12. But I think it's, again, something that's better 10, 15 years from now.
Yeah.
Well,
no,
we
this-
haven't had the Pac-12 for 10 years.
Well,
we go back and we remember fondly the Pac-12 that's no more.
But what made, like, man in the arena with Tom Brady, he had the wherewithal to allow cameras to follow him around for a story that can be told for years, but he's got the behind-the-scenes video in the moment, right? And he's recapping things. Like, I want that aspect, too. If it's ESPN, if it's one of the big networks, whatever. I love the idea, Davey. But hopefully, like, from the historical nature, if it's going to be released, if we're putting embargo on this, it cannot be released for 15 years or whatever. I would love to see how all the talks went down behind the scenes.
Oh, yeah.
And who the power players truly were versus the pretenders. While Eli Drinkwitz is speaking publicly, who's speaking behind the scenes?
Love it.
Well done.
Everyone have a great weekend.
We're out of here. Enjoy the weekend. Back on Monday for Hot Mike with Hutton and Withrow. Join us at 3 o'clock Eastern right here across the OutKick Network.